Chapter 867 Formless Transcendent Deity. Chapter 867 Formless Transcendent Deity. What is it? Hanju asked patiently. He blamed the evil heavenly emperor in his heart. What's our relationship? Do you have to beat around the bush? The evil heavenly emperor said. I'm preparing to explore the chaotic domain. I already have a goal. However, this domain has a powerful restriction and needs the help of a great Tao sage. I only know 2 great Tao sages. One is suppressed, and the other has disappeared. I can only look for you. Speaking of this, the evil heavenly emperor sighed. Hanju said, summon me. All right. The evil heavenly emperor did not say anything else. The dream ended. Hanju opened his eyes and asked in his mind, will I die if I help the evil heavenly emperor? 300 billion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. No, safe. Hanju was relieved. In any case, he had left his will in the Taoist temple. He could be revived even if he died outside. The question just now was mainly to consider if he would provoke a great Tao supreme existence. But it shouldn't be from the question's value. Hanju continued to comprehend the power of creation and waited for the evil heavenly emperor to summon him. Continue reading on MYB0XN0VEL. Khan the evil heavenly emperor used the invocation technique to summon him several days later. A black vortex appeared in front of Hanju, and he stepped in. In an instant he arrived in the chaos. He stepped out of the black vortex and saw the evil heavenly emperor. Beside him stood a man in silver armor. His aura was oppressive. The evil heavenly emperor immediately smiled upon seeing him. He cupped his fists and smiled. It's my honor to have the divine might heavenly sages help. Behind the 2 of them stood rows of heavenly troops. There were at least 10 million of them. All the immortals of the heavenly court looked at Hanju in reverence. The name of the divine might heavenly sage had long spread throughout the chaos. He had killed 20,000 divine authority generals with a single strike, which was equivalent to 20,000 great Tao sages being no match for him. Such strength was considered unique in the eyes of all living beings. He was even regarded as the strongest by many cultivators. He was so powerful that even the rules could not restrain him. Hanju said, You're still talking about these formalities. Could it be that His Majesty wants to flatter me? The evil heavenly emperor smiled. I have no choice. The divine might heavenly sage's name is too grand. I don't dare to be impudent. Let me introduce you. The person beside me is called the War Buddha, a Buddhist spirit from the Buddhist world. He's Chu Shuren's disciple, and also your grand disciple. Hearing this, the silver-armored man beside him hurriedly bowed very respectfully. Hanju glanced at the War Buddha and said, Your potential is not bad. I'll teach you a mystical power after this matter is over. Thank you, heavenly sage. The War Buddha said excitedly and hurriedly bowed. Oh! Hanju raised his eyebrows and looked unhappy. The War Buddha was stunned. Thank you, Grandmaster. While Hanju finally smiled. The heavenly troops behind them were in an uproar. They didn't expect the divine general to be the divine might heavenly sage's grand disciple. Hanju turned around and looked at the void ahead. He already felt a powerful restriction that even ordinary great Tao sages would probably find difficult to break. He used the simulation trial and did not discover any powerful enemies. How is it? Can you break it? The evil heavenly emperor asked with a solemn expression. Hanju didn't answer. He just took out the primordial judgment sword and slashed out. Without the sword chi, the void in front of him was instantly slashed into 2. A white light split the darkness into 2. Immediately after, it began to shatter with the white light as the center. Boom, space shattered and violent winds wreaked havoc. The great Tao lightning was extremely domineering. Hanju raised his hand and easily blocked all the wind and lightning for the heavenly court. The space ahead began to collapse as 7-colored light burst forth. Hanju narrowed his eyes and looked over. A world was revealed after the restriction shattered. This world was vast, 100 times larger than the entire heavenly Tao. Boundless vitality spread out, making one intoxicated. Hanju scanned with his sage sense and discovered countless living beings in this world, but no sages. The strongest was only a Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal. There were many Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals, but they did not transform. They were like ferocious beasts walking on the ground. That's right, the legendary first world of the chaos, the evil heavenly emperor said excitedly. Hanju glanced at him in surprise. He hurriedly explained. Actually, the chaos developed naturally before Pangu created the world. However, it disappeared later. The appearance of this world gave Pangu the idea, so he created the world later. Although the immortal world is not the first world, with the rules of the heavenly Tao, it has already surpassed the first world of the chaos. Hanju asked, "How did you find this place?" The chaos had countless such restrictions. Under normal circumstances, even great Tao sages did not dare to rashly barge in. They were probably the Tao field of other great Tao sages. How could the evil heavenly emperor predict that there was no Tao field behind the restriction? The evil heavenly emperor smiled. Of course, I was guided by an ancient existence. However, I can't tell you this ancient existence's name. Nan Hanju's expression didn't change, but he was shocked. Could it be the chaotic consciousness? Thank you, heavenly sage. There's no need to trouble you next. In the future, the heavenly Tao's chaotic heavenly road can also be expanded here and teach the living beings here. The evil heavenly emperor smiled. Hanju nodded and stepped into the black vortex. A beam of light flew out and entered the War Buddha's forehead before he disappeared. The black vortex disappeared. Hanju had already returned to the third Tao field. He sat on the mat and first used the simulation trial to check his surroundings. He was only relieved after confirming that no mysterious existence followed him to the Tao field. Hanju asked in his mind, "Who told the evil heavenly emperor about that world just now?" 1 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Tao Creator. Continue. Formless transcendent deity. Cultivation unknown chaotic deity, above order, transcends everything. Unspeakable name. It was actually not the chaotic consciousness. Hanju frowned. He asked, how many Tao creators are there? Could it be that there were 7 like the supreme rules? 1 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. 5. Hanju was deep in thought. 9th chaos, chaotic consciousness, formless transcendent deity, and 2 unknown existences. It was not many, but it was not few either. Furthermore, the 5 of them had already escaped the chaos. All living beings didn't know this. Hanju asked again. Be it in the chaos or outside, is the 9th chaos the strongest existence? 100 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. For the time being. It should be now. Hanju set a goal to surpass the 9th chaos. The ceiling was right in front of him. However, the 9th chaos was not his ultimate goal. He still had to break through to the Creator Lord realm after surpassing the 9th chaos. He wanted to constantly rise to newer heights. Hanju was excited just thinking about it. Wait. The formless transcendent deity told the evil heavenly emperor about the number 1 world of the chaos. Was he going to interfere in the situation of the chaos? That had to be the case. Hanju asked in his mind. Why did the formless transcendent deity help the evil heavenly emperor? 1 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Chapter 868 7 Tao Divine Weapon, Another Existence. Chapter 868 7 Tao Divine Weapon, Another Existence Continue. Hanju wanted to see what the formless transcendent deity was scheming. With that, Hanju entered the illusion. He opened his eyes. It was absolutely dark around him. A light suddenly appeared ahead. The light became brighter and brighter. Hanju looked carefully and discovered that the light came from the glabella of a majestic figure. He couldn't see the other party's face clearly and could only see his figure. He seemed to be wearing a robe and sitting in the darkness. Formless transcendent deity? Hanju was secretly shocked. He couldn't see the other party's true appearance, even after spending a quadrillion years of his lifespan. At this moment, Hanju suddenly felt a movement behind him. He turned around and saw a terrifying figure 10,000 times larger than the Buzhou Divine Mountain behind him. This figure floated in the void. He raised his left leg slightly and placed his palms in front of his chest. However, there were countless arms behind him, with as many branches as a huge tree. Hanju couldn't see his true appearance either. The primordial fiend celestial has yet to be born. Perhaps a variable will appear in the great Tao immeasurable calamity. I think so too. I've decided to release the heavenly ruins divine world. Perhaps the primordial fiend celestial will be born from it. Yes, that's settled. That evil heavenly emperor can use it well. It's also a fortuitous encounter for him. Perhaps he can grasp it. Continue reading on MYB0X and 0VEL. Commm. The two transcendent existences chatted for a while before the illusion shattered. Hanju opened his eyes. Although he had said little just now, he had revealed a lot of information. The Tao creator seemed to want the primordial fiend celestial to be born. No wonder the chaotic consciousness did not care about the primordial fiend celestial. Instead, it cared about the dark forbidden lord because he couldn't be controlled. Hanju had no intention of telling the evil heavenly emperor about this. The difference in cultivation level was too great. The more he knew, the more dangerous it would be. The evil heavenly emperor definitely knew that the other party had ulterior motives. But just as that transcendent existence had said, although the evil heavenly emperor was being used, it was also an opportunity for him. If there was no formless transcendent deity, the evil heavenly emperor could only cause a small splash in the chaos, and not cause a storm no matter how much he struggled. The evil heavenly emperor, who had obtained the heavenly ruins divine world, would definitely rise after the formless transcendent deity's guidance. Hanju stopped thinking. The current him was not qualified to scheme against a Tao creator. He had to reach the Tao creator realm first. Primordial Chaos Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal. Freedom Primordial Chaos Realm. Great Tao Primordial Chaos Realm. Great Tao Supreme Realm. Tao Creator Realm. Every realm was the difference between immortals and mortals. Hanju continued to comprehend the power of creation. Time passed quickly. 300,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. The heavenly Tao changed day by day. The fourth chaotic heavenly road was already in the creation stage. There were 4 more heavenly Tao sages. One of them came from the Red Fate world, and the other from the Buddhist world, indicating that the two worlds had completely fused into the heavenly Tao. The immortal world had also changed drastically. Countless races and cultivation were prevalent. To all living beings in the immortal world, Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals were no longer illusory. At the very least, they were existences that they could often hear about. Below the immortal world, the number of mortal worlds had already reached 100,000. The number was still increasing. Without the immeasurable calamity, and with too many providence sects running rampant, only by creating a mortal world would it be easiest to obtain great providence and merit. Under the rule of Li Xian'ao and Han Zuetian, the hidden sect still maintained its original rhythm, powerful and low profile. Hanju stayed in the third Tao field. The disciples of the 100-peak immortal river, and the second Tao field didn't disturb him, so his cultivation was very smooth. He suddenly opened his eyes one day. His gaze passed through the universe and landed on a huge star. Jiang Juesher and Liu Bei were discussing the Tao. After more than 200,000 years of interaction, the two of them had already become good friends. Liu Bei accepted Jiang Juesher as the master of this universe. At first, Jiang Juesher was wary of Liu Bei. However, he let down his guard when he discovered that Liu Bei indeed had no ill intentions. Liu Bei's body was the victorious fighting Buddha. He looked completely different from Hanju. Liu Bei didn't reveal his identity either. Hanju was very satisfied with Jiang Juesher. This kid had already reached the early stage of the Freedom Primordial Chaos realm. His potential was indeed impressive. What he had to do now was to keep Jiang Juesher by his side. It was not that one could survive in the chaos, just because they had good potential. Otherwise, after so long, there would not be so few great Tao sages. Hanju looked at him for a while before looking away and checking his emails. Your good friend Lao Dan was attacked by the fiend celestial vengeful spirit, X78203932 Your disciple Tao Sovereign was attacked by the fiend celestial vengeful spirit X9082761. Your good friend Evil Heavenly Emperor has grasped the providence of the heavenly ruins divine world. Your good friend Foolish Sword Sage has comprehended the Sword Tao, and his cultivation has increased greatly. Your son Han Tua has grasped the divine authority. His providence has increased greatly. Your good friend Yi Tian has grasped the divine authority. His providence has increased greatly. Your good friend Zhou Fan refined your enemy, 7 Dao Sage, into a divine weapon. His cultivation has increased greatly. The evil heavenly emperor was so fast. He had fused with the providence of the heavenly ruins divine world so quickly. The formless transcendent deity probably helped him. Further down, Hanju was attracted by Zhou Fan. What was this fellow doing? He checked his interpersonal relationships. 7 Dao Sage's portrait was still there. He had not died. Hanju pinched his fingers to deduce, and discovered that Zhou Fan didn't face resistance when he refined the 7 Dao Sage. It was the 7 Dao Sage's idea. He suddenly couldn't understand their relationship. After thinking about it, Hanju still sent a dream to Zhou Fan. In the dream, Zhou Fan opened his eyes and immediately bowed when he saw him. Without waiting for Hanju to speak, Zhou Fan took out a long weapon. The two ends of the weapon were like truncheons, and 7 thin patterns surrounded it. They meandered on the body of the weapon, looking very mysterious. Master, this weapon is a 7 Dao divine weapon. I refined it with the 7 Dao Sage, and it contains the power of 7 great Dao. How about that? Zhou Fan asked proudly. This was a dream. The 7 Dao divine weapon was only a phantom. Its power couldn't be seen. Hanju asked, why is 7 Dao Sage willing to let you refine it? Zhou Fan said, he's afraid of you. Not only is he afraid of you, but he's also afraid of other existences. He decided to change his identity, so he helped me. Help you? That's right. He'll help me attain the Dao. I'll help him revive when I become stronger. Before that, there's no 7 Dao Sage in the chaos. Only I, Zhou Fan, am left. Zhou Fan was very pleased. Hanju didn't want to discourage him and asked, what do you plan to do? Zhou Fan left with the Great Dao Tower and continued to wander the chaos after the divine authority generals were destroyed. Zhou Fan replied, I don't want to be like Chu Shuren and create a world. I also don't want to be like the evil heavenly emperor and recruit troops and attack everywhere. I want to explore the chaos and spread my reputation. Hanju said, how can you cultivate by wandering around? Zhou Fan chuckled. The stronger the Great Dao Tower is, the stronger I am. Hanju didn't ask anymore, and prepared to remove the dream. Master, I recently obtained information from the Great Dao Tower about the primordial fiend celestial. Do you want to know? Zhou Fan leaned forward and asked mysteriously. Hanju raised his eyebrows. Go ahead. Zhou Fan said. The primordial fiend celestial is fake news. The chaos is really afraid of another existence. Some supreme existences want to nurture the primordial fiend celestial to resist him. Chapter 869 5 million years old. Peacock's Dao Attainment. Chapter 869 5 million years old. Peacock's Dao Attainment. Who is the other existence? Hanju asked. Did Zhou Fan want to keep him in suspense? This kid had really grown up. Sensing Hanju's dissatisfied gaze, Zhou Fan hurriedly replied, I'm not sure either. Anyway, there's such an existence that needs the primordial fiend celestial to resist it. Hanju was deep in thought. Could it be him after his bloodline evolved? If nothing went wrong, his primordial fiend celestial bloodline would evolve and definitely affect the future in a few million years. Hanju asked in his mind, is the other existence Zhou Fan mentioned to me after my bloodline evolved? 10 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. Yes. I see. Hanju secretly heaved a sigh of relief. When he evolved, he would directly let his youngest son be born and intercept the position of the primordial fiend celestial. This way, the chaos wouldn't give birth to a second primordial fiend celestial. He would have one less potential enemy without a second primordial fiend celestial. Continue reading on MYB0XN0VL. Calm perfect. The more Hanju thought about it, the happier he became, but he remained calm on the surface. He asked, the Great Dao Tower is so powerful. Are you sure you can control it? There are no other transcendent existences behind it? Have you thought about who created the Great Dao Tower? The Great Dao Tower could even predict the future changes caused by a Great Dao Supreme. It was indeed not simple. I've also been worried about this. But currently, I've already fused with the Great Tao Tower, and don't sense anything amiss. Besides, how can there be no danger? Any opportunity is like this. As long as one is too powerful, they will definitely be coveted by mighty figures. Zhou Fan said seriously, Master, don't worry. I know what to do. I'll definitely look for you if I really encounter trouble. He could hear Hanju's concern, so he answered accordingly. Hanju said, as long as you know. With that he removed the dream. Hanju opened his eyes and muttered, I still have to focus on cultivation. He had already gathered 9 primordial fragments. He wanted to release his youngest son as soon as possible to prevent anyone from really transforming into a primordial fiend celestial. In the blue sky, layers of clouds and countless circular stone platforms floated in the air. Han Tua, Etian, and the other 3 great Tao divine spirits stood side by side on one of the stone platforms. They all looked in one direction, waiting for the arrival of the ultimate god of punishment. After a while, a black light descended in front of them. The ultimate god of punishment's voice came from the black light. I'm giving you a mission. Han Tua cupped his fists and said, Leader, please speak. The other 4 also bowed. They were already used to their new identities as the 5 great divine punishers. All these years, the ultimate god of punishment had treated them well, and had even taught them mystical powers. It was time to repay him. I want you to visit all the great Tao divine spirits. You can inspect whatever you want. You only need to walk around. The ultimate god of punishment's voice sounded again. Hearing this, the 5 divine punishers immediately accepted the order. The black light vanished. The ultimate god of punishment did not appear from the beginning to the end. Han Tua and the others turned around and left. Nearly 400,000 years passed quickly. On this day, a notification appeared in front of Hanju. Detected that you are 5 million years old, and your life has taken another step forward. You have the following choices. 1. Exit seclusion immediately, and promote the reputation of the primordial fiend celestial. You can obtain a great Tao fragment, a heavenly Tao spirit stone, a creation spirit stone, and a primordial fragment. 2. Cultivate in a low-profile manner and stay away from trouble. You can obtain a great Tao fragment, a creation spirit stone, and a primordial fragment. This time, the system acted mischievously again. There was an additional reward on the first option. Unfortunately, Hanju wouldn't be fooled. He silently chose the second option. At this point, he already had 8 great Tao fragments and 6 primordial fragments. Perhaps his stellar primordial body would transform in another 3 million years. Hanju took out the creation spirit stone and fused it with a ball of fiend celestial qi. He finally saw the hope of breaking through after so many years of cultivation. Now the primordial world was already extremely vast. Although it couldn't compare to the chaos, it was already several times larger than the heavenly Tao. The primordial world had yet to reach its limit. As the nebulous primordial qi in it increased, Hanju's supreme power kept increasing. He was probably at most 500,000 years away from breaking through. He was very satisfied with his cultivation speed. Look at the foolish sword sage. He was still at the early stage of the great Tao supreme realm. Hanju visited Divine Lord Peacock in his dreams. Tens of thousands of years ago, he sensed that someone had become a great Tao sage in the chaos. It was Divine Lord Peacock. After Hanju attained the great Tao, the chaos finally gave birth to a new great Tao sage, after so many years. It was obvious how difficult achieving the great Tao realm was. In the dream, Divine Lord Peacock opened his eyes and saw the pitch-black Hanju. He was immediately pleasantly surprised and hurriedly knelt down. He was secretly shocked. It was still so difficult for him to sense the legendary dream of the Dark Forbidden Lord, even after reaching the great Tao realm. Although it was a little slow, you succeeded, Hanju said with a slightly praising tone, making Divine Lord Peacock feel ashamed. Divine Lord Peacock hurriedly asked, Forbidden Lord, what do you need me to do? Just tell me. Hanju said, cultivate for the time being. I'll preach the Tao for you. The great Tao realm can't be your end. With that, he began to preach the great Tao of extreme origin. The great Tao of extreme origin was all-encompassing. All 3,000 great Tao could benefit from his lecture. Divine Lord Peacock already had his own Tao, and could not change his allegiance to the great Tao of extreme origin. What Hanju wanted to do was to help his Tao become stronger. So this lecture would not expose the great Tao of extreme origin. The great Tao Supreme preached the Tao. It didn't talk about content, but used the Tao voice to guide people into a state of Tao comprehension. Divine Lord Peacock quickly entered a state of Tao comprehension. Hanju controlled the time as he preached the Tao in the dream. It seemed like 10,000 years had passed, but only a day had passed in reality. The dream had already ended when Divine Lord Peacock opened his eyes. He was excited. What realm was the Dark Forbidden Lord at? He was already a great Tao sage, but he was still easily lured into a state of Tao comprehension by him. It was obvious how great the difference between the two was. On the other side, Hanju opened his eyes and started to check his emails. Regarding the rules of time, Hanju couldn't use them on himself, or speed up the time process of the entire heavenly Tao. After all, the heavenly Tao didn't belong to him. Time was among the 7 supreme rules. However, the definition of time was different from what mortals thought. It was the same as the continuation of the power of creation. The transmission speed of the power of creation was still constant, even if the mighty figures accelerated the time of their domain. Therefore, controlling time was meaningless to the mighty figures. However, time was very terrifying to all living beings who did not rely on the power of creation. The emails accumulated over 400,000 years were still very abundant. Hanju read them with relish. In short, the chaos was still peaceful. No major battles occurred. Hanju looked at the third Tao field after reading the emails. The universe of stars was still silent, but the third Tao field was already covered in flowers and plants, like a paradise. Hanju raised his hand and took out a ball of soul. It was the soul of Han Tuo's mother, Qingwan'er. Hanju had been using the nebulous primordial qi to nourish Qingwan'er's soul for millions of years. Although she had been sleeping, her soul was constantly becoming stronger. Chapter 870 Qingwan'er's Surprise. Chapter 870 Qingwan'er's Surprise. Hanju naturally had a plan now that he took out Qingwan'er's soul. He wanted her to become the master of this universe. Good things should not go to outsiders. Moreover, Qingwan'er would definitely think of a way to keep up with his immortality if she revived. Otherwise, what was the point of reviving? Hanju didn't lack women. Since he was going to revive her, Qingwan'er had to accompany him completely. Hanju began to use the power of creation. After so many years of comprehension, he finally grasped a trace of the power of creation. Although it was far from being as mysterious as the creation rule, it was not difficult to revive a living being. Qingwan'er's soul was intact. She only needed to recover her body. That day, Qingwan'er's body was created, and she became an immortal emperor. Her body wouldn't be able to withstand her soul if her cultivation was lower. Qingwan'er lay on the bed in white clothes. They were casually created by Hanju. She slowly opened her eyes, her gaze confused. Memories surged from the depths of her mind, causing her eyes to widen. Was I reincarnated? Qingwan'er muttered to herself. She subconsciously raised her hand and discovered that she was not a baby. Continue reading on MYB0XN0VL. What happened? She wanted to sit up, but she accidentally broke through the Taoist temple and landed in the sky. She stopped in the air, her body trembling. What's going on? This spirit energy. Qingwan'er widened her beautiful eyes and sized up her body in disbelief. She could feel a surging power in her body. She couldn't help but think of spirit energy. Although she was immortal in the past, she knew about cultivation. She looked down and discovered a Taoist temple on the vast mountain. After she broke through the top, it was recovering from an illusion. Could it be that I did not die? Qingwan'er frowned and tried her best to control her body to slowly land. She carefully walked into the Taoist temple and asked, "Is anyone here?" Liu Bei was still accompanying Jiang Juesher, so the third Tao field was empty and quiet. Crack. The door to the Taoist temple suddenly opened. Unable to see the situation inside, Qingwan'er became even more nervous, not daring to enter rashly. In the Taoist temple, Hanju stood up and tidied his clothes. If he had not reacted quickly, Qingwan'er would have been lost. The Taoist temple was not brittle enough for an immortal emperor to destroy. Hanju waited for a while. Qingwaner had yet to enter, so he had no choice but to raise his hand and suck her in. Qingwaner couldn't control her body, and was sucked into the Taoist temple. Terror and despair filled her heart. She subconsciously closed her eyes. When she landed on the ground, she opened her eyes and was stunned. Husband. Qingwaner shouted in surprise and rubbed her eyes. Hanju smiled. What? Are you still afraid of me? If not for me, who can help you revive? Qingwaner immediately put down her doubts and pounced into his arms when she heard that. Husband, am I dreaming? You really revived me? Also, why are you so young? Qingwaner kept asking. She had too many questions. Hanju pulled her to a seat and explained. I was in pain after you died. I wanted to wait and die of old age. I didn't expect to encounter an immortal and obtain the opportunity to cultivate. After millions of years of cultivation, I created a world and obtained a great opportunity before reviving you. Wait, millions of years? Qingwaner was shocked and looked incredulous. Hanju said, that's right. About 5 million years have passed. We're no longer in the immortal world. Qingwaner hurriedly asked, what about Tuor? Hanju remained silent. Qingwaner's face instantly turned pale. She asked with a trembling voice, he's already, right after so many years, even immortals have to die. Hanju sighed. He's not dead. Huh? Qingwaner's tears stopped. Hanju said helplessly, he's still alive, but he's already grown up. He naturally won't follow me. He even has descendants. Qingwaner punched him and said coquettishly, husband, you're teasing me. Qingwaner was overjoyed upon learning that her son was still alive. She believed Hanju. After all, children had to grow up and live their own lives. She didn't stay by her parents' side back then either. Tell me about your experiences over the years. Qingwaner pulled his hand and urged. Hanju said, let's talk about it in the future. Get used to your dermic powers first. Then he began to teach her. Qingwaner's body was in its prime. In addition to Hanju, her 100 years of experience were not worth mentioning. Soon, she regained the mentality of a young woman, and even acted coquettishly. A year passed in the blink of an eye. Qingwaner had completely adapted to the power of an immortal emperor. This year was the sweetest time she had ever lived. Only she and Hanju were together with no worries. Most importantly, she knew that she and her husband could still rely on each other for countless years. She even felt like she was dreaming. On this day, the two of them put on their clothes and sat by the bed. Hanju said, all right, I should cultivate too. I need to cultivate in seclusion for 100,000 years each time. Don't disturb me if there's nothing important. You can wander outside, but you can only stay within a radius of 1,000,000 miles. This is my Tao field, and is isolated from the outside world. You can't go out even if you want to. 100,000 years? Qingwaner was stunned. Hanju ignored her and closed his eyes. The reason he hid the truth from Qingwaner was that he couldn't be bothered to explain. Furthermore, he wanted to create a sense of urgency so that Qingwaner could cultivate in peace. As for Xing Hongxian, Xian Qingjun, and the other women, Hanju was not worried that Qingwaner would mind their existence. Back when the two of them were in the mortal world, Qingwaner had taken the initiative to take in a concubine for him. But he had rejected her. Time passed year after year. Qingwaner was a little impatient after cultivating in seclusion for a few years. Thus, she wandered outside the Taoist temple for a few days. Before returning to continue cultivating, she finally began to get used to the boring cultivation after 1,000 years. In the void, the 5 divine punishers stepped on the divine light and advanced. Han Tuo stood at the front and frowned. Etian walked to his side and asked in a low voice, you seem to be uneasy recently? Han Tuo said, indeed. For some reason, I keep feeling a familiar aura, but I can't be sure who it is. He frowned. He had never felt this way. Could it be that your younger brother has broken through? Etian asked teasingly. Back then, Han Tuo felt uneasy because of that mysterious younger brother, and had no choice but to ask the evil heavenly emperor to question that unknown transcendent existence. No, it was very oppressive back then. I just feel that it's familiar now, and I don't feel any discomfort. Han Tuo shook his head. He smiled and said, I wonder what realm my younger brother is at now. Etian smiled. He's probably stronger than you. He can suppress you just by relying on his bloodline. Han Tuo did not agree. That's a good thing if that's the case. The other three great Tao divine spirits approached and asked curiously who Han Tuo's younger brother was. Chapter 871 Road Different from the Heavenly Tao. Chapter 871 Road Different from the Heavenly Tao. I've never seen my brother before. Stop asking. Han Tuo shook his head and smiled, his eyes filled with anticipation. His younger brother must have grown up after so many years. He wondered how his character and cultivation level were. Etian smiled and said, Perhaps he will fight with you for the family inheritance. Han Tuo shook his head and laughed. I'm not fighting. I'm not qualified anyway. What family inheritance? A great Tao divine spirit asked curiously. They had always been curious about Han Tuo's background. Han Tuo smiled and did not say anything. Etian was the same. He pretended to be mysterious. The three great Tao divine spirits looked at each other and stopped talking. Time passed. 100,000 years passed very quickly, but it was very torturous to Qingwan. Han Ju had been cultivating in seclusion, and she didn't dare to disturb him. It was equivalent to her living alone for more than 100,000 years. When she was free, she would go to the tree where Liu Bei was previously and talk to the flowers to express her depression. On this day, Han Ju opened his eyes. Qingwan was cultivating at the side and did not notice that he had woken up. Continue reading on MYB0XN0VEL. Calm Han Ju couldn't help but smile. This girl. He also heard the conversation between Qingwan and the flowers and found it funny. Han Ju called out softly, Waner. Qingwan trembled as if she had been electrocuted and immediately opened her eyes upon hearing his voice. She looked at Han Ju in surprise and pounced into his arms. Husband, you're finally awake. She felt extremely aggrieved. She had never thought that 100,000 years would be so torturous. Even now, she did not know how she had endured it. Han Ju said earnestly, This is cultivation. I cultivated alone most of the time before I revived you. Qingwan was silent. Han Ju said, I can accompany you to create some living beings if you're lonely. Qingwan asked in surprise, Really? Han Ju stood up, and she followed closely behind. The two of them walked out of the Taoist temple. The two of them came to the tree. Han Ju waved his right hand, and the flowers on the ground turned into men and women. They were all young. There were more than 100 of them. The 100 or so transformed living beings looked at each other in confusion. Han Ju began to preach the Tao and activated their intelligence. Then he taught them language and cultivation techniques. Qingwan was also immersed in it. Han Ju only spoke for half a day, but the transformed living beings felt like a long time had passed. This is your queen. You have to listen to her here in the future, understand? Han Ju instructed. More than 100 transformed living beings hurriedly knelt to Qingwan. Qingwan smiled and asked them to stand up. Han Ju turned around and left, leaving the rest to her. These living beings did not have the power of creation, so their cultivation levels were not high. With Han Ju's cultivation level, it was as easy as flipping his palm to turn stones into spirits. However, if they wanted to be like Qingwan, whose body directly had the cultivation of an immortal emperor, Han Ju had to use the power of creation. Qingwan had already reached the deity realm after 100,000 years. The physical potential created by the power of creation would not be bad. Furthermore, Qingwan's soul had been tempered by the nebulous primordial qi for millions of years. It was even more impressive. She was still stronger than the heavenly Tao's chaotic physique, even if she couldn't compare to the chaotic fiend celestial. Han Ju teleported to the second Tao field and called Morong Qi to receive the new fiend celestial. Li Yao called Tao Comprehension Sword out and wanted to be alone with Han Ju. Tao Comprehension Sword blushed and fled. Han Ju understood Li Yao's thoughts. Wasn't it just a Tao discussion? 10 years later, Han Ju left, and Li Yao called Tao Comprehension Sword back. Tao Comprehension Sword asked about the cultivation situation. Liao smiled and said, I'll be able to attain the Freedom Realm soon. Wow, so powerful? It's alright. I'm still far inferior compared to Morongqi and the other two. They've long reached the mid-stage of the Freedom Realm. Sisterly, tell me, should I? Dao Comprehension Sword squirmed as she recalled what the Black Hell Chicken had said to her. Liao smiled. I'll create an opportunity for you next time. But whether you can succeed depends on yourself. Sect Master is no longer the same as before. Love in the mortal world can't attract him. After reaching the primordial chaos Dao fruit, the joy was incomparable every time she broke through a minor realm. Dao Comprehension Sword nodded and began to feel nervous. On the other side, Hanju was reading the emails in the third Dao field. Recently, Han Tua and Etion had been very active and were often attacked, but they were not severely injured. Their providence became stronger through battle. Hanju also noticed an email. Your good friend Ancestor Shitian has absorbed the inauspicious evil, and his cultivation has increased greatly. What was the ancestor doing? Previously, he had absorbed the dark power. Now, he had absorbed the inauspicious evil. Why did Hanju feel that the ancestor was constantly turning more evil? He pinched his fingers to deduce, and discovered that he couldn't deduce Ancestor Shitian. It seemed that this fellow had a Dharma treasure. Interesting. Hanju had no intention of dissuading Ancestor Shitian. Everyone had their own path. No matter who left, the chaos would still exist. Perhaps Ancestor Shitian could create his own path? Hanju looked at Jiang Juesher after reading the emails. He thought for a moment and sent a dream to him, using his old image. Jiang Juesher opened his eyes and fell silent when he saw Hanju. Although he was silent, his eyes were filled with nostalgia. Hanju said, Disciple, how have you been all these years? The difference in cultivation level between the two was too great. When Hanju used the Dark Nightmare, he also used the power of the Confusion Fiend Celestial to numb Jiang Juesher's senses and mind. This was not the first time Jiang Juesher had dreamed of his master in the cycle of reincarnation. He wasn't on guard and talked about his experiences over the years. After a long while, Master, I'm doing very well now. I have a place to cultivate in peace. I'll revive you one day. Hanju raised his hand and taught him a mystical power. Jiang Juesher was caught off guard and fell into a daze. He woke up after a certain period of time. Liu Bei, who was beside him, asked curiously, What's wrong? Your mind was not here just now. This is not good. You'd have been attacked if there were enemies around. Jiang Juesher smiled and said, Nothing. I just comprehended a mystical power. This was not the first time he had comprehended a mystical power, because he had dreamed of an old friend. He felt that this was the reaction of his Tao heart being stimulated. His great reincarnation creation technique was extremely profound. Even he did not dare to confirm its upper limit, so anything was possible. Liu Bei nodded and smiled. If this universe gives birth to living beings in the future, what kind of creation do you think is better? Jiang Juesher was silent. He had been in the universe of stars for a period of time, and also felt that this universe had great potential. We can imitate the heavenly Tao, but we can't walk the heavenly Tao's path, Jiang Juesher said in a low voice. Liu Bei asked curiously, What path do you think we should take? Jiang Juesher replied, The world is divided into levels. Each level is differentiated by more levels. The cultivation level of each major realm is divided into 4 realms. All living beings will put cultivation level and ascension as their goal. This can reduce internal friction. You can arrange the galaxy distribution and form an overlapping state. Every realm has a huge restriction. You have to reach a certain realm before you can encounter the heavenly tribulation and transcend it. Once you succeed, you are not allowed to descend into the mortal world to prevent breaking the rules. Chapter 872 Surpassed the Freedom Sage. Chapter 872 Surpassed the Freedom Sage. Liu Bei fell into deep thought. Hanju had already promised him that he would build this universe in the future, so he would think about this question when he had nothing to do. It had to be said that Jiang Juesher's suggestion was very good. After ascending, they were not allowed to descend into the mortal world. This could prevent experts from occupying cultivation resources and harm the younger generation. Liu Bei said, I think it's feasible. We can force them to transcend the tribulation. When they reach a certain realm, they have to transcend the tribulation. Jiang Juesher smiled. Not bad, not bad. He became friends with Liu Bei not only because this universe belonged to him. Liu Bei's personality also made him very comfortable, and he even felt that they were fellow Taoists. The more they chatted, the more excited they became. At the same time, outside the universe of stars, rolling black mist was surging over, as if darkness was devouring space. It was terrifying. In the Taoist temple of the third Tao field, Han Ju had yet to enter his cultivation state when he noticed the black mist outside the universe. At a glance, he saw countless vengeful spirits roaring silently in the black mist. Inauspicious evil? Continue reading on MYB0X and 0VEL. The invisible inauspicious evil had nowhere to hide in Han Ju's eyes after he reached the great Tao Supreme Realm. Han Ju suddenly focused on one of the inauspicious evil. He was different from the other inauspicious evil. He contained dharmic powers, and his vitality was hidden in the depths of his soul. This person seemed to be the leader of the inauspicious evil. His cultivation level had reached the early stage of the Freedom Primordial Chaos realm, and was not considered powerful. Han Ju didn't attack. He could use the inauspicious evil as Jiang Juesher's whetstone. Cultivating alone would easily numb him. It was also a good thing to experience battle occasionally. Not long after, Jiang Juesher and Liu Bei sensed an enemy attack. They arrived outside the universe of stars. Jiang Juesher frowned. This was not the first time he had encountered an inauspicious evil. The black mist contained a dense ominous aura that made him very uneasy. Liu Bei was the same. They chose to escape when they encountered an auspicious evil in the past, so their expressions were extremely ugly now. What should we do? He wanted to escape, but the two of them had been discussing how to build the universe, so he felt a little ashamed now. Liu Bei said, let's fight. No matter where we go, we might encounter an auspicious evil, unless it's the domain of a mighty figure. He took a deep breath, and was not worried. After all, Han Ju was here. However, Han Ju had yet to make a move. Perhaps he was in seclusion. Thus, they could only resist until he exited seclusion. Jiang Juesher looked at him in surprise. He already knew Liu Bei's personality. To put it bluntly, he was afraid of death. Liu Bei forced a smile and said, there has to be a goal to work towards. Otherwise, why would we cultivate? These words shocked Jiang Juesher. That's right. What was cultivation for? Jiang Juesher wanted to revive his master, but that was only the goal he added later. Before that, he only wanted to become stronger. However, he discovered that becoming a sage was not the end after attaining the Tao. He knew that there was always someone better after coming to the chaos. There was no peak in cultivation. Why did he cultivate? To become the strongest? Jiang Juesher was not confident. He had heard that the chaotic fiend celestials had been completely destroyed by the divine authority generals. Jiang Juesher suddenly thought of the heavenly Tao's divine might heavenly sage. The divine might heavenly sage was also in existence who cultivated diligently all year round. But in the chaos, many cultivators were puzzled as to why he protected the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao was created by Pangu and had been fused by the Tao ancestor. No matter how strong the heavenly Tao was, providence would not fall on the divine might heavenly sage. Jiang Juesher seemed to understand at this moment. Liu Bei was the same. Liu Bei's voice floated over. Fellow Taoist Jiang, can you fight with me? You can escape if you really can't win. Jiang Juesher hesitated for a moment before nodding slightly. He twisted his neck and stretched his arms, then smiled and said, then let's fight. I haven't fought for hundreds of thousands of years. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Then, they rushed into the black mist in the depths of the void. Soon the battle erupted. In the third Tao field, under the tree, Qingwaner suddenly stood up and looked up at the starry sky. The 100 or so transformed living beings did not sense the danger outside the universe of stars. They were still playing. Because they were not humans, their growth cycle was extremely long. They were still young after 10 years had passed. Already at the deity realm, Qingwaner could see the void outside the universe of stars. She saw Liu Bei and Jiang Juesher, using their mystical powers in the black mist. Her beautiful eyes widened as she hurriedly returned to the Taoist temple. Husband outside. Seeing that Hanju had yet to enter seclusion, Qingwaner said anxiously. However, she thought that Hanju's cultivation was stronger than hers, and he definitely sensed it. So she didn't finish her sentence. Hanju chuckled. Those two are protecting this universe. Qingwaner was stunned. Protecting? That black mist is an inauspicious evil. The inauspicious evil is an evil vengeful spirit in the chaos. It specializes in attacking living beings. You can't see them or capture their aura. Qingwaner was surprised. She asked curiously, who are those two? Didn't you say that you're the only one here? Hanju smiled. One of them is a clone I created in the past, and the other is a disciple I want to nurture. By the way, this disciple of mine thinks I'm dead. Qingwaner was even more curious, and hurriedly asked him to clarify. Hanju didn't hide anything, and told her about Liu Bei and Jiang Juesher's backgrounds. Liu Bei was formed by the enemy's body. Jiang Juesher's experience was more surprising, hundreds of thousands of reincarnations. How many years did it take? Qingwaner found it unimaginable. They're so powerful. Are they Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals? Qingwaner asked curiously. She had heard of Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals in the immortal world. They were the peak of immortals. Hanju smiled and said, they're sages. My disciple even surpassed normal sages. Sage? Qingwaner was surprised again. Hanju said, above the immortal emperor realm is the deity realm, and above the deity realm is the Zenith Heaven realm. Above that are the pseudo-sage, sage and freedom sage realms. Qingwaner asked in surprise, your disciple has already reached the freedom sage realm, but you're still lying to him. Aren't you afraid that he'll take revenge on you? How could Jiang Juesher, who had experienced hundreds of thousands of reincarnations, treat his master, who had accompanied him for 2 lifetimes, as his family and obey his orders? Hanju said, because I've surpassed the freedom realm. Qingwaner widened her eyes. Hanju saw the change in her expression, and was secretly pleased. He looked at the battle outside the universe and smiled. My disciple is quite capable. It seems that I don't need to do anything. Husband, how strong are you now? Qingwaner grabbed his arm and asked curiously. Hanju pretended to be profound and said, I can't tell you. I'm afraid it will scare you. Cultivate well. You will reach my level one day. Qingwaner asked, what about Tuor? He's also a freedom sage. My son is so powerful. Qingwaner was extremely excited. She was even more surprised than when she learned of his cultivation. Hanju curled his lips in jealousy. Indeed, this girl still cared about her son the most. Qingwaner added, husband, let's have another child. Tuor has only accompanied me for 20 years. He might have already forgotten what I look like. Chapter 873 Jiang Juesher's Terror. Chapter 873 Jiang Juesher's Terror. Another one? Hanju was helpless. Although he only had 2 children, it was already enough to give him a headache. His eldest son, Han Tuo, was outside and refused to go home. His youngest son's potential was too strong, and was stuck in his mother's womb for millions of years. Hanju said, haven't I already created so many living beings for you? Isn't it enough to relieve your boredom? Qingwaner said coquettishly, how can they be compared to my own child? Besides, you're so powerful. Aren't you going to think of a way to have more descendants? Not to mention that you've surpassed the freedom realm. Most of the powerful people in the mortal world have more than 2 children. Hanju hesitated. Qingwaner continued to persuade him. Husband, I'll take care of the child since you usually cultivate in seclusion. Hanju couldn't dissuade her, and felt that it was feasible. With his current cultivation level, there were not many existences in the chaos that he was truly afraid of. It was not troublesome to have a few more children. Fine. Husband is the best. Qingwaner pounced into his arms and started to pull his clothes. Hanju was speechless. So urgent. The battle outside the universe isn't over yet. You've already surpassed the freedom realm. What are you afraid of? Your disciple is a major realm weaker than you. Even he can resist the inauspicious evil. At that time, you can wave your hand, and the black mist will probably disperse. Continue reading. on MYB0X and 0VEL.com, you're quite open-minded. Of course. I've never been worried ever since I married you. Anyway, I'm not afraid even if the sky falls with you protecting me. Forget it. As you wish. Outside the universe of stars, Jiang Juesher sat in the void, and a huge shadow that emitted a dazzling light condensed behind him. This huge shadow was similar to him. It spread its arms, and its dermic powers transformed into white rings of light that swept in all directions. The white rings of light directly dispersed, and were unstoppable the moment they touched the black mist. Liu Bei stood beside Jiang Juesher and looked at him in a daze. This kid's potential. Liu Bei was envious and shocked. Han Ju had mentioned to him that Jiang Juesher's potential was terrifying, but he didn't expect it to be to this extent. At first, the two of them were still being suppressed by the inauspicious evil, but as they fought, Jiang Juesher comprehended it. He used the great reincarnation creation technique to create a providence mystical power that could suppress the inauspicious evil. Using providence to suppress the enemy. Powerful. Liu Bei was stunned as he stared at Jiang Juesher's side profile. For some reason he thought of Han Ju. Although the two of them looked completely different, their calm aura before the battle was too similar. It made people involuntarily relax, as if as long as they were around, all danger would disappear. Liu Bei did not disturb Jiang Juesher, and waited for him to comprehend the Tao. Jiang Juesher killed the inauspicious evil as he comprehended the Tao. He was like a true god in the sky, insufferably arrogant. A cry suddenly came from the black mist. Who are you? Jiang Juesher did not answer. Instead, he raised his right palm and pushed forward. The huge shadow above him waved his palm. The dazzling light on his body turned into a pillar of light and rushed over, directly destroying the black mist near the direction of the sound. After an hour, the black mist near the universe of stars was completely dispersed. The mysterious existence did not say anything and quietly left. Jiang Juesher slowly opened his eyes. Not a bad mystical power. Jiang Juesher muttered to himself, extremely excited. Although he often created mystical powers, those that could destroy an auspicious evil were definitely ranked in the top 3. Liu Bei praised him. Fellow Taoist Jiang, what a good mystical power. Jiang Juesher smiled. Do you want to learn it? I can teach it to you. More inauspicious evil will definitely attack again in the future. Really? We're brothers. Why would I lie to you? Thank you, fellow Taoist Jiang. Ha ha ha, what are you saying? You're welcome. True. The two of them looked at each other and laughed. They were both in a good mood. Inside the Taoist temple, Qingwaner and Han Ju tidied their clothes. Qingwaner rubbed her abdomen and looked happy. Han Ju could see that she was already pregnant. Because he already had 2 sons, Han Ju deliberately chose to conceive a daughter this time. Her potential was at most comparable to Han Tua. Qingwaner's cultivation was too weak. Han Ju even sealed her bloodline potential, just like he did to Han Tua back then. A third primordial fiend celestial couldn't be born, with Xing Hongshuan's son around. Han Ju said, by the way, she can only be ranked 3rd if my daughter is born. I have a wife who is also pregnant with a son. Qingwaner was stunned when she heard that. She couldn't help but ask, where is she? Why isn't she with you? She was not angry or jealous. It was normal for men to have multiple wives in the immortal world. As long as they were strong enough, even women could have many husbands. Moreover, 5 million years had passed and she was already dead. It was not unreasonable for Han Ju to find another wife. In another Tao field. She's busy cultivating, Han Ju replied. Qingwaner smiled. Then it seems that I have to work hard. I can't let you think that I like to slack off. Han Ju smiled and touched her head. I'll go back to cultivate. The battle outside has ended. Qingwaner nodded and walked out of the Taoist temple. Han Ju smiled. He was looking forward to his youngest daughter. Qingwaner gave birth to her daughter in Han Ju's Taoist temple a year later. She didn't feel any pain with her cultivation level. She was fine after giving birth. The youngest daughter was very lively. Her cries were loud, causing the other living beings outside the Taoist temple to discuss. They all knew that the queen was about to give birth to a daughter, and they were also looking forward to it. Hanju rarely ended his cultivation early. He took his swaddled daughter and showed an expression of adoration. Did we disturb you? Qingwaner asked. Hanju smiled. It's fine. I'll spend 100 years watching her grow up. It's fine. Qingwaner was pleasantly surprised. Hanju said, let's call her Han Qing'er. What do you think? Qingwaner understood the meaning of the name and smiled happily, nodding in agreement. I'll bring you back to the immortal world to have fun when she starts to learn. You've been revived for so long, it's indeed boring. It's been hard on you. It's good that you know. Qingwaner curled her lips. She was indeed a little aggrieved. She had the mentality of a mortal before. Who could withstand letting a mortal cultivate alone for 100,000 years? However, Hanju could say it. Her grievance instantly turned into sweetness. Then, Hanju and Qingwaner walked out of the Taoist temple and introduced their daughter to the other living beings in the third Tao field. These living beings were very excited and wanted to hug Han Qing'er. Just like that, Han Qing'er grew up happily being loved by many people. Although her potential was sealed by Hanju, she was still outstanding. She could fly at the age of 1 and breathe in spirit qi at the age of 3 to cultivate. At the age of 5, she had already reached the nascent soul realm. On this day, Hanju brought Qingwaner and Han Qing'er to the main Tao field. The 5-year-old Han Qing'er wore a green lotus dress. Her small face was exquisite and cute. She had inherited Hanju's appearance. Although it was still inferior to Hanju, it was enough for her to be loved by everyone. Hanju first brought the mother and daughter to the Taoist temple next door to see Xing Hongxian. Chapter 874 passed. Chapter 874 passed. Hanju saw that Xing Hongxian was still meditating after he entered the Taoist temple. Qingwaner was nervous, but Han Qing'er did not show any fear as she stared at her. Xing Hongxian opened her eyes and saw the three of them. She immediately stood up to welcome them. She smiled and said, "This must be Sister Qingwaner." Hanju had already sent a voice transmission to tell her about this a year ago, so she was already prepared. Qingwaner immediately relaxed upon seeing her smile. The two women chatted enthusiastically. Xing Hongxian looked at Han Qing'er behind Hanju and smiled. "Qing'er, call me eldest mother." Han Qing'er tilted her head and asked curiously, "What do you mean by eldest mother? Isn't there only one mother?" "Eldest mother?" Hanju found it funny. Xing Hongxian picked her up and smiled. "Your mother and I are both your father's wives. I'm also considered your mother." Qingwaner was secretly puzzled. Eldest mother? Continue reading. On MYB0XN0VEL. Xing Hongxian met Hanju earlier than her? She suddenly thought of something. Before he met her, Hanju's identity was very mysterious. Could it be that Xing Hongxian was already following him back then? It was very likely. Qingwaner did not ask. There would be plenty of opportunities in the future. She was not jealous of Xing Hongxian because she was very passionate. She even took the initiative to chat with her daughter and showed them kindness. After chatting for a long time, Qingwaner asked curiously, "Where's your son? Didn't husband say that you also have a child?" Xing Hongxian touched her abdomen and smiled. "Here. He's not born yet." Qingwaner was dumbfounded. Not born yet? She couldn't help but look at Hanju. Hanju said, "This child is a little special. He has been nurtured for a long time and has yet to be born. However, according to the time he was nurtured, he should indeed be Qing'er's elder brother." "Ah, my elder brother? He's still in the womb? Then shouldn't he be the younger brother? I want to be the elder sister. I want to be the elder sister." Han Qing'er shook her head and shouted. She reached out to touch Xing Hongxian's abdomen with a look of surprise. Xing Hongxian smiled and said, "All right, you can be the elder sister, but as the elder sister, you have to take care of your younger brother. In the future, you have to give in to him in everything. If he's the elder brother, he has to take care of you and give in to you in everything. Do you want to be the elder sister or the younger sister?" Han Qing'er tilted her head and thought for a moment. "Then I'll be the younger sister." Qingwaner couldn't help but laugh. Xing Hongxian rubbed Han Qing'er's nose and smiled. "Looks like our Qing'er is very smart." "Of course I'm the smartest." Han Qing'er smiled proudly. Hanju stood at the side and smiled at them. They left 2 hours later. Hanju brought the mother and daughter to Xian Qingjuan's Taoist temple. Xian Qingjun was also his Tao companion. The two of them had already done it as husband and wife. He had also told her about this a year ago. Unlike Xing Hongxian, Xian Qingjun was already waiting for them in the Taoist temple. Although Xian Qingjun was not as lively as Xing Hongxian, she still made Qingwaner feel close to her. She even gave her a Dharma treasure. However, Hanju felt Xian Qingjuan's meaningful gaze before leaving. Xian Qingjun also wanted a child. She had been rejected by Hanju before. Now that she saw Han Qinger, she naturally had some thoughts. Hanju sent a voice transmission to comfort her before leaving with Qingwaner and her daughter. He secretly used his will to replace his body and jumped into the immortal world with his wife and daughter. The three of them came to a human town. Looking at the passers-by, Qingwaner was stunned. Too long the scene in front of her made her want to cry. After 5 million years, her old friends and relatives had long turned to dust. Han Qinger was very excited and kept shouting Hanju brought them around. The immortal world was vast. Hanju planned to travel the world while waiting for Han Qinger to grow. A year later, they returned to the city they had lived in back then. However, this place was already barren. There were mountains and weeds everywhere. Qingwaner stood on the cliff in a daze. Han Qinger flew around in the forest and even asked Hanju to chase after her, but he ignored her. Hanju came to Qingwaner's side and said meaningfully, "Time is like this. One day, you will get used to it." Qingwaner turned to look at him and asked, "So you were also very calm when facing me back then?" Hanju replied calmly, "That's right." "Humph. Then why did you lie to me and say that you only encountered an immortal encounter after I died? Then, do you want to hear my story? In any case, I still have to accompany you for decades. It's enough for me to talk slowly." "Sure." Qingwaner's low spirits vanished and her eyes lit up. Hanju looked at the sky in despair and said, "I was born in a mortal world below the immortal world. My parents were slaves in a herb garden outside the sect. When I was young, they fled the herb garden and left me there alone." Qingwaner frowned. She didn't expect him to have such a miserable background. Hanju recounted his past in detail, but he hid the names of the system, the hidden sect, and the divine might heavenly sage. Time passed minute by minute. Dusk descended. Han Qinger appeared behind the two of them with a wronged expression. She had left for half a day, but her parents did not look for her. Hanju held her hand and continued talking to Qingwaner as he walked. Qingwaner seemed to be listening to a story. She was so engrossed that she didn't even care about her daughter. Hanju finally finished several days later. Qingwaner sighed. "I didn't expect you to have so many rough experiences before you met me." Qingwaner looked at him with an extremely gentle gaze. This man was always so calm. He faced all the tribulations of time alone, but he had never complained of suffering or exhaustion. She suddenly felt ashamed. Hanju tried his best to revive her and let her cultivate, but she couldn't tolerate it. In the past, Hanju didn't have anyone to protect him. Unlike now, she only needed to cultivate and didn't have to worry about anything. "Father, Mother, are you done chatting? I'm bored to death." Seeing that the two of them were finally silent, Han Qinger immediately threw a tantrum and shouted unhappily. These days, she spent most of her time sleeping. She had no choice. She didn't understand her parents' words and was not the least bit interested in them. Hanju pinched her face and smiled. "Qinger, how about I bring you to see your niece?" "Niece? What is a niece?" "Your brother's daughter." "Ah, I want to go. Bring me there." Han Qinger immediately became excited. Qingwaner asked in surprise, "Tuor has a daughter? She's still alive?" Hanju smiled. "That kid is like me. He doesn't care about his daughter at all. If not for my help, your granddaughter would have died long ago. By the way, you originally had a grandson who died millions of years ago." Qingwaner frowned. Hanju didn't say anything else and brought the mother and daughter to the netherworld. They arrived at Yang Tiandong's King of Hell Hall. Yang Tiandong was cultivating. The hall was silent, and there was no ghost servant around. "Father, who is he? He looks so terrifying." Han Qinger's voice woke Yang Tiandong up. Seeing Hanju, he was stunned and his mind went blank. "Master." Chapter 875 Grandpa's Identity. Chapter 875 Grandpa's Identity. Master. Master. After a moment of shock, Yang Tiandong hurriedly came to the King of Hell's table and knelt in front of Hanju. Qing Wan'er and Han Qing'er were both a little nervous. After all, Yang Tiandong had been the King of Hell for millions of years. His pressure was still very strong. Ordinary people's legs would go weak when they saw him. Hanju said, "Get up. How have you been all these years?" He could deduce Yang Tiandong's experience, but it was better for him to say it personally. Yang Tiandong suppressed his excitement and said, "Day after day, I deal with the reincarnation of the netherworld. Although it's boring, it's safe. I can also spend time cultivating." For some reason, Yang Tiandong inexplicably wanted to cry when he saw Hanju again. He was the King of Hell. How could he cry? However, he couldn't control his emotions. He thought that Hanju had already forgotten about him after millions of years. That's right. There were many geniuses in the hidden sect, and there was no lack of heavenly Tao sages. What was he? Although he usually pretended to be lazy, he was actually very disappointed and regretful every time he heard about the geniuses of the hidden sect. Hanju said, "This is my wife and this is my daughter Han Qing'er. Please, reading on my box N0VL. Calm. Hearing this, Yang Tiandong looked at Qing Wan'er and her daughter and hurriedly bowed. Qing Wan'er was caught off guard. When she first saw her disciple, she should give him a gift, just like Xian Qingjun. Hanju smiled and said, "All right, there's no need to be polite. Call Han Xingyuan over." Yang Tiandong hurriedly agreed and went to summon her. Han Qing'er asked curiously, "Father, who is he? He looks so fierce." Hanju said, "He's father's first disciple, but father hasn't seen him for a long time." "Why not? He's like you. He likes to run around too much." "Ah, that's right. Daddy will never see you again if you run around in the future." Hanju's words frightened Han Qing'er. Her eyes instantly turned red and tears welled up. Qing Wan'er rolled her eyes at him and said angrily, "Why are you scaring her?" Hanju smiled. "I'm not scaring her." Qing Wan'er was stunned, while Han Qing'er cried in fear. Hanju was amused. This girl was usually too lively. He should teach her a lesson lest she ran away at 17 or 18 and brought a man back to propose marriage. Although Hanju didn't want to care too much about his children, he hoped that Han Qing'er could focus on cultivation. The higher one's cultivation level was, the more good men they would encounter. Of course, there were bad men no matter what realm they were at. But at least Hanju hoped that she would suffer less. She would find someone weak to marry if her cultivation level was too low. They wouldn't be able to escape death. At that time, she would have to beg Hanju to save her husband. He brought Han Qing'er to meet so many old friends to nurture her judgment. It was not that Hanju looked down on mortals. In any case, when he was a mortal, if a fairy loved him, he would definitely be afraid of attracting trouble. He wouldn't dare to accept it unless the other party forced him. Qing Wan'er comforted Han Qing'er. Not long after, Yang Tiandong brought Han Xingyuan over. He walked out and waited outside after leading her into the hall. Han Xingyuan was puzzled, but she was suddenly stunned when she saw Hanju. Hanyu. Her descendant was already a sage. No, it was not Hanyu. A face that had almost been forgotten by Han Xingyuan appeared in her mind. Her father Han Tua. She asked curiously, "You are?" She thought that Hanju was Han Tuo's son. But he was definitely not simple to be able to call the King of Hell and make him avoid suspicion. Qing Wan'er looked at Han Xingyuan, and her heart melted. She seemed to see Han Qing'er growing up. She immediately went forward and wanted to hold her hand. However, Han Xingyuan dodged warily. "Oh, you're my granddaughter. Why are you hiding?" Qing Wan'er pouted. "Granddaughter?" Han Xingyuan was stunned. She subconsciously looked at Hanju. Hanju said, "That's right. Han Tua is our son. The King of Hell who just went out is my disciple." Han Xingyuan widened her beautiful eyes. Her past doubts were immediately resolved. No wonder Yang Tiandong took such good care of her. In the past, she had been worried that Yang Tiandong would have improper thoughts about her. Later, she discovered that Yang Tiandong was a little careful when taking care of her, afraid that he would cross the line. She had thought that it was because of Hanyu, but in the end, it was not. Han Xingyuan was at a loss for words. Han Qing'er came over and smiled. Are you my niece? Niece? Han Xingyuan looked at the young Han Qing'er and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She could tell at a glance that this girl was only a few years old. Hanju said, I've come to see you in the past, and even taught you a mystical power. It's just that you didn't realize it, and I didn't want to disturb your life. Han Xingyuan was enlightened. She had been puzzled before, and thought that she had obtained the heavenly Tao comprehension. Han Qing'er began to talk to Han Xingyuan, interrupting her thoughts. Qingwaner also stared at her with pity. The three women chatted happily. Hanju didn't want to disturb them, and walked out of the hall. He appeared at Yang Tiandong's side, frightening him so much that he knelt again. Hanju raised his hand, and forcefully lifted him with an invisible force. There's no need to be like this. Are you really distant from me? Hanju said helplessly. Yang Tiandong did not know how to explain. He indeed did not dare to relax. The person in front of him was the immeasurable merit divine might heavenly sage. The most powerful existence in the entire heavenly Tao. How could he be rude? Hanju said, I'll make you a sage. After so many years, your temperament should have been tempered. You have to cultivate diligently in the future. Understand? Yang Tiandong was flattered and hurriedly thanked him. Hanju was speechless. Why was he kneeling again? He couldn't be bothered with Yang Tiandong. Instead, he asked about the heavenly race and the calamity race in the netherworld. When Yang Tiandong talked about the netherworld, he immediately became familiar with it and talked non-stop. He was now the leader of the King of Hell, so the merit of managing the netherworld was naturally on him. Hanju listened quietly. 2 hours later, Hanju left with Qingwaner and her daughter. Yang Tiandong and Han Xingyuan stood in front of the King of Hell's hall and looked in the direction they had left for a long time. Han Xingyuan asked, King of Hell, who is my grandfather? Why haven't I heard of Hanju? Yang Tiandong laughed secretly. You've never heard of Hanju. But have you heard of the divine might heavenly sage? However, Hanju didn't take the initiative to say it, so he naturally couldn't spill the beans. He's very powerful anyway. Not to mention you. Even your father benefited from his reputation. Otherwise, your father would have long died, and not even had the chance to give birth to you. Han, you should have been wiped out too. It was also my master who helped him. Yang Tiandong said meaningfully, causing Han Xingyuan to fall into deep thought. Sage. However, there were too many sages now. Han Xingyuan didn't know which sage it was. Yang Tiandong said, Qing'er will probably come again in the future. At that time, you have to take good care of her. He knew that Hanju didn't come here just to show off. He wanted them to remember Han Qing'er. If she came to the netherworld in the future, they had to take care of her and not slack off. Yang Tiandong had no complaints about this. Instead, he was very happy his master became more human-like after gaining a daughter. Chapter 876 Returning to his home. Legend of the Immortal. Chapter 876 Returning to his home. Legend of the Immortal Father. How old is Han Xingyuan? Father, where is my brother? Father, I want to find my brother. Father, above the clouds. Hanju was annoyed. He really wanted to throw this girl down. Qingwaner saw through him and smiled. Your father will throw you down if you continue to cause trouble. Han Qing'er smiled proudly. I'm not afraid. I can fly. Hanju glared at her, and didn't mention Han Tua. Han Qing'er was so angry that her eyes turned red. After that, Hanju brought his wife and daughter to the immortal world. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Han Qing'er had already grown into a young girl. She wore a beautiful red dress, and her long hair was tied behind her head. She was in high spirits as she walked with Qingwaner. They looked like sisters instead of mother and daughter. Hanju stood in front of the two women and looked at the sky. Father, where are we going next? Han Qing'er asked, her eyes filled with anticipation. Please, reading on MyBox N0VL. Calm ever since she was young, she had been very happy and had no worries. She could see new things every day, and didn't need to spend any energy on traveling. It was very easy. Hanju said, to the mortal world. This is the last time. After that, you should leave the immortal world and go home. It will be difficult for you to come out in the future. You have to cultivate well. Han Qing'er curled her lips and said, So be it. I'm so talented. I'll surprise you when the time comes. Over the years, Han Qing'er had also understood the cultivation situation in the immortal world. After comparing, she discovered that she was extremely talented, so she also had expectations for cultivation. Qingwan'er smiled and said, Qing'er's potential is indeed not bad. Back then, your brother didn't have your talent, but he still resolutely left alone to seek immortal encounters, even if his potential was mediocre. At the mention of Han Tua, Han Qing'er became interested and asked, Mother, what's my brother's cultivation level now? Didn't you say that he lived for 5 million years? Is he a Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal? In the immortal world, many living beings had lived for 5 million years, but could not break through to the deity realm. Her mother was also only at this realm. She thought that Han Tua was stronger, because she had always been looking forward to seeing the brother she had never met, and she even worshipped him. Qingwan'er shook her head and laughed. She glanced at Hanju and, seeing that he didn't want to say it, could only say, perhaps. Hanju had instructed that Han Qing'er could not know the realm above the sage realm to prevent laziness. Qingwan'er could understand this. At least after she knew that Hanju had surpassed the freedom realm, she felt that it didn't matter if she cultivated or not. In any case, she couldn't catch up to him. She wouldn't be in danger or cause trouble for Hanju as long as she stayed by his side. Han Qing'er curled her lips and said, If we can't see Big Brother, then we'll see Second Brother. Father, can we visit Second Brother before we go home? He might already be born. Hanju didn't even turn around. Of course, I have to go back and take a look, but your second brother is still not born. Why isn't he born yet? Could it be that eldest mother is not human but a demon? Of course not. It's just that your second brother is too talented. Too talented? Han Qing'er's eyes lit up. Hanju snorted. Stop asking. He waved his right sleeve, and the three of them arrived at the reroll world. Below were the 18 peaks of the Jade Pure Sacred Sect, but the landscape had long changed. Han Qing'er asked curiously, What is this place? Why is there no one here? Qingwan'er also looked at him in confusion. Hanju said, This is the place where I was born. Hearing this, Qingwan'er and Han Qing'er became interested. The three of them landed on the ground. Hanju walked in front, and his thoughts returned to 5 million years ago. Qingwan'er and Han Qing'er looked around and didn't disturb him. Hanju came to a cliff and looked at the mountains. The glorious appearance of the Jade Pure Sacred Sect in the past appeared in front of him. Endless disciples ran rampant in the mountains. Hanju thought of Elder Iron, Li Qingzi and Taoist Nine Cauldrons. Everything had become the past. His old friends had long reincarnated. Father, there's someone on the opposite mountain. Han Qing'er suddenly pointed ahead and exclaimed. Following her gaze, he saw someone cutting trees in the forest opposite. There was no one in a radius of 10,000 miles. It was indeed strange for a woodcutter to appear here. But this didn't attract Hanju's attention. Han Qing'er rolled her eyes and leaped into the forest opposite. Qingwan'er did not stop him. That woodcutter did not have any cultivation. Even a bad person couldn't hurt his daughter. Han Qing'er landed behind the woodcutter and snorted. The woodcutter trembled in fear. He turned around and staggered, falling to the ground. The axe slipped out of his hand and accidentally cut his palm. Blood instantly flowed out. The woodcutter frowned in pain. Han Qing'er panicked. Sorry. She noticed that the woodcutter was also young. He looked to be in his early 20s. The woodcutter picked up the axe and asked warily, Who are you? A demon? She was so beautiful and wore a red robe. She was definitely a demoness. The woodcutter's face turned pale, and he broke out in cold sweat. Demons ate humans. Han Qing'er curled her lips. I'm not a demon. I'm a fairy. She waved her right hand, and the wound in the woodcutter's palm instantly healed. The woodcutter stood up and ran away. Han Qing'er raised her hand and waved, using her spirit energy to move him back. Why are you running? I'm really not a demon. I came to ask you why you're the only one nearby. Han Qing'er said angrily. The woodcutter said with a trembling voice, I live nearby. There's indeed no one else around here. Han Qing'e asked in surprise. You're so timid, but you still dare to stay here alone? The woodcutter gritted his teeth and did not answer. He began to think of a way to escape. Why are you here? Han Qing'e asked. She added, I won't make things difficult for you if you answer truthfully. I can even teach you cultivation techniques. The woodcutter's eyes lit up. He hurriedly said, It's said that there are inheritances left behind by immortals in this area. Every 1,000 years, someone will obtain an immortal's cultivation technique from here and become famous. I just wanted to try. I've been here for more than half a year and haven't found anything. Then why are you cutting trees? I have to start a fire. There are many beasts at night. I'll die without a fire. Oh, this was the first time Han Qing'e had seen a true mortal. She was filled with interest and began to ask all sorts of questions. The woodcutter told her everything he knew. Han Qing'e also learned of his background. The woodcutter's village was slaughtered by fiendish cultivators, and all of them were refined into dried corpse puppets. He was lucky to escape. He had always wanted revenge, and had been searching for immortal encounters since he was 10 years old. However, he did not have any cultivation potential, and the various sects did not accept him. He could only pursue the illusory legends of immortals. Han Qing'e couldn't bear it when she heard this. Just thinking about it from the woodcutter's point of view, she felt despair. How about I help you take revenge? Han Qing'e asked. The woodcutter's eyes lit up. However, he immediately shook his head and said, No, I want to take revenge personally. Please teach me the cultivation technique. Han Qing'e looked helpless and spread her hands. Actually, I don't know any cultivation techniques, but I can ask my father. After living for so long, she had never cultivated seriously. She relied on her talent. The woodcutter immediately knelt and kowtowed. Thank you, fairy. As long as your father is willing to teach me the cultivation technique, I'm willing to be your slave and serve you forever. Chapter 877 Han Yu's Mood. Chapter 877 Han Yu's Mood. Han Qing'e didn't answer the woodcutter. Instead, she flew to Han Ju's side and told him his background. Father, should we avenge him? He's too pitiful. Han Qing'e said indignantly. She had never encountered such a calamity, so she didn't dare to imagine what she would do if she faced such a situation. Han Ju said, Many people are suffering in the world. Do you want to help them one by one? Han Qing'e was stunned. She didn't expect him to reject her. Qing Wan'er shook her head and said, Qing'e, you've been protected too well by us since you were young. You've never seen the suffering of the mortal world. People like him are everywhere in the world. There are tens of thousands of mortal worlds below the heavenly Tao. Han Qing'e was silent. Han Ju looked at the woodcutter and said softly, There are indeed cultivation techniques here. Let him find them. As long as he finds them, he will have a chance to seek revenge himself. Isn't that what he's looking forward to? Han Qing'e asked, Where are the cultivation techniques? Let him find it himself. He won't give up if you tell him there's one here. He'll find it sooner or later. Fine. Han Qing'e curled her lips and flew back to the woodcutter to inform him. Qing Wan'er sighed. This girl is so innocent. How can we let her go out alone in the future? Daughters were different from sons. They always made parents more worried about safety. Han Ju smiled. That's why I brought her here. Qing Wan'er asked in surprise. Could it be that you already know of this person's existence? Of course. Otherwise, why would I bring you here? Only I can reminisce upon the scenery. You can't empathize. Han Ju shrugged. Hearing this, Qing Wan'er looked worshipful. Could the legend of the immortals here be? Yes, it's the cultivation technique I left behind. Qing Wan'er was even more surprised. However, she calmed down when she thought of Han Ju's cultivation. In the forest. After Han Qing'e explained, she said, As long as you're willing to find it, you will definitely find it. Good luck. The woodcutter hurriedly said, How should I repay you? Han Qing'e smiled. Take care of yourself first. How is following us now repaying you? Although she had little experience, she was not stupid. Wasn't taking this person in as a slave the same as protecting him? Han Qing'e leaped and quickly flew away, not giving the other party a chance to speak. She landed in front of her parents and smiled. I've already explained it clearly. Hanju nodded in satisfaction. He was very satisfied with Han Qing'er's performance. She was not unreasonable and disobedient, nor was she kind-hearted and controlled by the other party. You still have to be careful if you encounter such a thing in the future. How do you know that what the other party said is true? Qingwana reminded. Han Qing'er said, he shouldn't be lying to me. I don't think he's lying. She looked at Hanju and asked, Father, what do you think? Hanju said, I don't think it's important. I wouldn't care if he was telling the truth if it were me. Han Qing'er curled her lips and muttered, What are you saying? Nothing. Han Qing'er shook her head and left for the nearby forest. Hanju smiled and didn't say anything. He left with Qingwana and strolled around the forest. They left on that day. They arrived outside the 33rd heaven and entered the Buzhou Palace. Hanyu was meditating and cultivating when he heard footsteps. He opened his eyes and hurriedly stood up and bowed when he saw that it was Hanju. Greetings, ancestor, Hanyu said respectfully. He then glanced at Qingwana and Han Qing'er, secretly curious. He didn't dare to deduce, afraid that he would offend Hanju. Han Qing'er's eyes lit up when she saw him. Her gaze moved back and forth between Hanju and Hanyu in surprise. Qingwana was also stunned. Compared to Han Tuo, Hanyu was more like Hanju's son. They were too similar. The one beside me is Han Tuo's mother, Qingwana. The other is my daughter, Han Qing'er, who is also Han Tuo's younger sister. Hanju introduced simply, scaring Hanyu so much that he hurriedly knelt and bowed again. Even sages had to bow to their ancestors. Qingwana hurriedly helped him up. Her eyes lit up as she stared at him and smiled. Too similar. I didn't expect Tuo to have a descendant like you. I heard that you've already attained the Tao. You've really done us proud. Hanyu was extremely nervous and said, It's all thanks to ancestors' help. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. Han Qing'er asked excitedly, You're a sage? Qingwana's eyelids twitched. She knew that something was wrong. She had let it slip. Hanyu did not answer immediately. He was a sage after all. After being around for so long, he could naturally understand the implied meaning. Han Qing'er asked because she didn't know. He noticed Qingwana's expression and couldn't help but smile. What sage am I? I'm just cultivating here. In the immortal world, a zenith heaven golden immortal can also be considered to have attained the Tao. Han Qing'er was enlightened. Hanju looked at Hanyu in a different light. This kid is so eloquent now. It was unknown what Qiu Shilai, or another sage, would do in this situation. In any case, Li Daokong was not so smooth. Han Qing'er began to pester Hanyu, asking about his cultivation experiences. Perhaps because she had been following her parents, she was especially interested in other people's stories, but she was very uninterested in her father's story. Hanju shook his head and laughed, not stopping her. He had brought Han Qing'er here because he wanted Hanyu to recognize her as his disciple. In the future, Hanyu would take care of her when Han Qing'er came to the heavenly Tao. He believed that Hanyu could do it. Hanyu was very nervous when facing Han Qing'er. Although he could tell that Han Qing'er was not even 20 years old, the pressure of seniority made him unable to breathe, especially with Hanju beside him. He was afraid that he would be negligent and offend him. Every word was said after careful consideration. Several hours later, Hanju bid farewell to Hanyu. Hanyu, you have to receive me when I come to the heavenly Tao to play in the future. Han Qing'er giggled. She had a good impression of Hanyu. He was different from the zenith heaven golden immortal she had imagined. He was very gentle and spoke nicely. Of course, she also understood the reason. So, she was even more curious about her father. She suddenly realized that she didn't know her father's identity. Hanyu heaved a sigh of relief after sending Hanju and the other two off. With a great-grandmother above him, Hanyu's mood was rather strange. However, this great-grandmother was lively and smart. She was very easy to get along with. Hanyu couldn't help but think of Han Tuo. His emotions became complicated again. He wondered how that ancestor was doing. Hanyu actually felt very guilty ever since he knew that Han Tuo didn't leave him in the lurch. But he did not say anything. He didn't have the chance to see Han Tuo again. Ancestor, where are you now? Why aren't you returning to the heavenly Tao? Hanyu thought silently. With Hanju's cultivation level, he was already guarding the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao was developing so well now. But Han Tuo did not return. He suspected that he had hurt him. Back then, he had said proudly that he wanted to surpass Han Tuo. Han Tuo might be afraid of hurting him, and decided not to return. Han Yu sighed and sat down again. He closed his eyes and continued cultivating. Chapter 878 Return of the Divine Punishers. Chapter 878 Return of the Divine Punishers. After leaving the 33rd heaven, Han Ju and the other two didn't stay long in the main Dao field before they teleported to the third Dao field. It's been a long time. I almost forgot about this place. Home is still the best. Han Qing'er walked out of the Taoist temple, stretched, and looked around with a nostalgic expression. Beside him, Qingwan'er covered her mouth and laughed. You'll regret saying that. Han Qing'er asked why. Qingwan'er sighed. Your father is going into seclusion next. So be it. It means that you can't leave. It's fine. He'll bring me out after his seclusion ends. Do you know how long he'll be in seclusion? How long can it be? Wait. Mother, do you mean that father will be in seclusion for a long time? How long? 100 years? 1,000 years? No way. Han Qing'er's face turned pale. She had encountered many cultivators in the immortal world. When cultivators mentioned mighty figures, they said that they would enter seclusion for 1,000 years. Although Han Qing'er had just returned, she was still looking forward to the immortal world. She had been thinking that after cultivating at home for a period of time, she would go to the immortal world alone. She would have freedom and feel more excitement without the company of her parents. Qingwan'er shook her head and laughed, revealing a mysterious smile. Han Qing'er was shocked. Could it be more than 1,000 years? All right, go and meet the disciples of the Tao field. You have to start cultivating in a few days. At that time, I'll teach you how to cultivate. Qingwan'er patted her head and smiled dotingly. Then, she walked towards the 100 living beings under the tree in the distance. These living beings still looked like boys and girls after 10 years. Han Qing'er was attracted by them. She did not expect them to still be so young after so many years. She immediately jogged over. On the other side, in the Taoist temple, Han Ju started cultivating again. He felt that these 10 years were longer than hundreds of thousands of years of seclusion. His thoughts settled when he entered seclusion. Time passed very quickly. In these 10 years, he had brought his wife and daughter to travel and saw and learned every day. Naturally, he felt that it was long. Han Ju felt inexplicably uneasy after not cultivating for too long. He was afraid that he would slack off. He had to maintain his cultivation attitude forever. Otherwise, he might fail even if he became the strongest. Since ancient times, countless people had changed at the peak of the strongest. Juniors would always rise when the strongest person wasn't paying attention. Just like Han Ju now, he had casually entered seclusion for 100,000 years. If it was another talented cultivator, they would have already risen in this time. Someone like Pango might appear after 100,000 years. Han Ju's Tao heart stabilized as he thought of this. In the depths of his soul, the primordial world expanded even faster. In a palace, the divine-robed Taoist's expression changed when he looked at the 5 figures in the hall. 5 great divine punishers. Dressed in silver armor, Han Tuo stared at the divine-robed Taoist and said, "You should understand why we came." Etienne's expression was mocking. Their mentality had begun to change ever since they became divine punishers. No great Tao divine spirit dared to bicker with them. Anyone would become arrogant, let alone Etienne. Understood. I won't stop you, the divine-robed Taoist said. He sighed in his heart. Master was really powerful. Even his son had become a divine punisher, and he was their leader. Although the 5 divine punishers were free, they had already begun to appear in the chaos. Han Tuo said, "We want to stay in the chaotic domain under your jurisdiction for some time. Gather the freedom sages and the great Tao sages. We'll give you 10,000 years." The divine-robed Taoist nodded and had no objections. He only pretended to be aggrieved. Han Tuo was very obedient in his heart. He thought that Han Tuo was a pawn planted by Han Ju in the great Tao divine spirits, so he didn't dare to appear close, much less reveal his relationship with Han Ju. The divine-robed Taoist closed his eyes and began to send voice transmissions to the Freedom Sages and the Great Tao Sages. Tian looked at Han Tua and asked, "The Heavenly Tao is in this chaotic domain. Should we go back and take a look?" Heavenly Tao. The other three divine punishers were curious. The battle of the divine authority generals shook the chaos. The divine might Heavenly Sage was even lauded as the strongest person in the chaos. They were naturally curious. They didn't dare to underestimate the divine might Heavenly Sage, even if they became divine punishers. 20,000 divine authority generals had been killed by the divine might Heavenly Sage. This was a true battle record. Every divine authority general was equivalent to a great Tao sage. Han Tua hesitated. A divine punisher smiled and said, "Go take a look. Now that you're the divine punisher, you can be considered to have one honor for the Heavenly Tao. Perhaps you can ease the relationship between the Heavenly Tao and the divine spirits." Yes, this is a good opportunity. Perhaps this is also the intention of the ultimate God. The three divine punisher experts agreed to go to the Heavenly Tao. They even believed that this was the ultimate God of punishment's main goal. Exploring the Great Tao divine spirit domain was only a pretense. What they really needed to do was to build a good relationship with the Heavenly Tao. Han Tua said helplessly, "All right, we'll return with the Heavenly Tao sages after meeting the chaotic sages." Tian chuckled. "Don't forget to recommend me to Godfather." Han Tua rolled his eyes. The other three divine punisher cultivators teased Tian. Universal Hall. The sages gathered. Everyone present was a Heavenly Tao sage. Heavenly Venerate Xiandu, Heavenly Venerate Wufa, Pan Xian, and the other freedom sages were not present. The sages chatted among themselves. Dozens of Heavenly Tao sages gathered here, looking quite lively. The current sage circle had already been divided into several small circles. It was worth mentioning that these small circles were mainly made up of old-school sages. They seemed to be roping in factions and fighting openly and secretly. At this moment, a figure appeared in front of him, revealing Heavenly Venerate Xian. The hall instantly quietened down the moment he appeared. "We're about to return from the divine Tao field. This time, 5 great divine punishers are accompanying us. They're transcendent existences who supervise all the great Tao divine spirits. Everyone be prepared to receive them," Heavenly Venerate Xiandu said. The sages were in an uproar. They had been worried that the divine robed Taoist was plotting and wanted the freedom sage to go with his main body. Heavenly Venerate Xiandu and the other freedom sages were also worried at first, but they were no longer worried after learning the identities of the 5 great divine punishers. 2 of them were actually from the Heavenly Tao, and one of them was the son of the divine might Heavenly Sage. They naturally did not have to worry. In fact, that was the case. "Alright everyone, don't worry. The 5 divine punishers are only here as guests. They're most likely afraid of the divine might Heavenly Sage, and want to ease the relationship between the chaos and the Heavenly Tao. There's no need to be so tense." Heavenly Venerate Xiandu comforted them and disappeared. Yang Che looked at Qiu Shilai and asked, "Senior, should we tell the Heavenly Sage about this?" Qiu Shilai said, "Of course not. Do we need the Heavenly Sage to personally receive them? They need to perform well. Besides, to put it bluntly, the 5 of them are just freedom sages. The Heavenly Sage killed 20,000 great Tao sages with his sword. Do you know how strong a great Tao sage is? Senior Foolish Sword Sage is a great Tao sage. It's equivalent to killing 20,000 Senior Foolish Sword Sage with a single strike. Why can the 5 great divine punishers directly see the Heavenly Sage?" Chapter 879 Son of the Heavenly Sage. Chapter 879 Son of the Heavenly Sage. Qiu Shilai's words were firm and powerful, immediately sweeping away the uneasiness in their hearts. That's right. The Heavenly Tao had the divine might Heavenly Sage. What was there to fear? That's right. With the divine might Heavenly Sage around, we don't have to be afraid at all. The Heavenly Sage has always been in seclusion, but he'll definitely sense it if the Heavenly Tao is in trouble. Speaking of which, even the chaotic mighty figures didn't dare to mistreat me when I mentioned my identity as a Heavenly Tao sage when I traveled the chaos previously. That's right. The development of the heavenly Tao is already unstoppable. This time, we have to receive the 5 great divine punishers to show our heavenly Tao's magnanimity. The sages discussed, and the atmosphere became lively. The new sages was very curious about the divine might heavenly sage. To the recently promoted heavenly Tao sages, the divine might heavenly sage was a legend. It was extremely mysterious and fascinated them. The 5 great divine punishers arrived thousands of years later. They entered the 33rd heaven under Heavenly Venerate Xian Du's lead. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du was secretly shocked. The power of the heavenly Tao actually did not stop the 5 great divine punishers. Why? Pan Xian and Heavenly Venerate Wufa's eyelids twitched. Please reading on MYBOX no VEL. The group arrived at the Universal Hall. The sages gathered here. Their gazes landed on the 5 great divine punishers. They were all curious and did not bow. Etian glanced around and smiled. The development of the heavenly Tao is indeed not bad. There are already so many sages. Feng Liang looked at him with a complicated expression. Etian was the reincarnation of a chaotic fiend celestial, obtained by the heavenly Tao spirit. It was equivalent to the reincarnation of the heavenly Tao. Feng Liang, who had created his own heavenly Tao sect, naturally felt a sense of familiarity. However, the current Etian had already surpassed Feng Liang in both power and cultivation. The son of the heavenly Tao defeated the heavenly Tao, so Feng Liang was naturally a little embarrassed. Han Tuo's gaze landed on Han Yu. The two of them looked at each other silently. Han Yu did not expect Han Tuo to be one of the 5 great divine punishers and be at the front. Nazom Han Tuo was very glad to see Han Yu become a sage, but he did not show it on his face. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du led the 5 great divine punishers to the front. The sages sat down. Han Tuo said, I was born in the heavenly Tao. I didn't come with any special intention. You don't have to worry. The words worry made the sages nervous. The divine punishers smiled. They had been out for some time. They would be nervous no matter who saw them. As time passed, they naturally developed arrogance. Han Tuo was the same. The 5 great divine punishers had arrived, but the sages did not bow. They were even more arrogant than the great Tao divine spirits. This was not good. Once the heavenly Tao sages developed a disdainful attitude towards the great Tao divine spirits, it would only cause endless trouble for the heavenly Tao. Today, he was leading the 5 great divine punishers. He could ignore it. But what if other great Tao divine spirits came in the future? They couldn't always let his father clean up after them. Han Tuo felt that there was a need to teach them a lesson to prevent these sages from causing trouble again. Pan Xian smiled and said, We're naturally not worried. We're not afraid of anyone in the chaos with the divine might heavenly sage guarding the heavenly Tao. The other sages smiled. They were not afraid of offending the great Tao divine spirits. They were already irreconcilable enemies. The current peace was just that the great Tao divine spirits could not do anything to the divine might heavenly sage. Since they were enemies, why should they bow? Heavenly Venerate Xian Du said, I forgot to introduce you. This divine punisher is the divine might heavenly sage's son, Han Tuo. The heavenly sage's son? The sages were moved. Etian chuckled. My name is Etian. I'm the divine might heavenly sage's divine spirit son. The other 3 divine punishers rolled their eyes. This fellow was too shameless. He was really damaging the 5 great divine punishers' reputation. However, the other 3 divine punishers were convinced by Han Tuo and Etian. Their combat talent was too terrifying, and had long defeated them. Han Tuo shook his head and laughed, but he did not say anything. So you're the heavenly sage's son. Then your family. May I know how fellow Taoist Han became a divine punisher? The South Extreme Heavenly Venerate asked with a smile. Han Tuo didn't hide anything, and talked about his background over the years. He and Etian were both born and died. Becoming the divine punisher was open and aboveboard, so he was naturally not afraid to say it. The other 3 divine punishers also had their own bumpy experiences, but they were not familiar with the heavenly Tao and naturally would not share them. For a time, only Han Tuo's voice was left in the Universal Hall. The sages listened to him. The hidden sex sages looked at him with pride. Han Tuo was Han Ju's son, and would definitely inherit the hidden sect in the future. They would naturally be aggrieved if he was a good-for-nothing. Now Han Tuo's performance made them very satisfied, and even pleasantly surprised. Indeed, dragons gave birth to dragons and phoenixes gave birth to phoenixes. The news quickly spread to the hidden sect. The personal disciples in the second Dao field also learned of this through the myriad worlds projection. They gathered together to discuss this matter. Morongqi sighed. Grandmaster's hands extend really far away. They landed on the 5 great divine punishers, and his son even became the leader. Great Loose Heaven's eyes flickered. Not necessarily. Perhaps this is also the leader of the divine spirit's plan against sect master. Everyone thought about it and agreed. Han Ming frowned. It won't be good if the divine spirit's leader can control Han Tuo's will. Guan Bubi shook his head and said, "How can sect master not know what you're thinking? Since he knows, it means that he has absolute confidence." After reincarnating freely, Guan Bubi, who was born with an invincible heart, worshipped Hanju the most. In his eyes, Hanju completely matched the name of invincibility. How could an invincible person be plotted against? How could someone who could be plotted against be invincible? At this moment, the heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial walked over and shouted, "Guan Bubi, enter the simulation trial and fight." The chaotic Fiend Celestials were naturally combative. The simulation trial had already become their greatest hobby. As the strongest among the Fiend Celestials, the heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial could only find Guan Bubi to fight, because the other Fiend Celestials did not dare. Only Guan Bubi was headstrong. Guan Bubi immediately stood up and said, "So be it. Today, I'll remove your title as the strongest Fiend Celestial." The others who were chatting about Han Tuo looked at each other and found it funny. Their worries vanished after being reminded by Guan Bubi. That's right. Who could scheme against Hanju? Time passed quickly. In the third Dao field, Hanju opened his eyes. It meant that after 100,000 years, his cultivation level had improved greatly again. He was getting closer and closer to breaking through. He had wanted to break through in one go, but his heart softened when he thought of Han Qing. He sent a voice transmission to her, asking her to enter the temple. Bang! The door of the Taoist temple was pushed open. Dressed in red, Han Qinger blew in front of Hanju like a fire wind. "Father!" Han Qinger shouted, her voice filled with grievance, resentment, and surprise. She had waited too long for this day. 100,000 years. She was about to go mad. Many times, she wanted to barge in forcefully, but she was stopped by Qing Waner. In order to defeat Qing Waner, she had no choice but to start cultivating. Qing Waner also worked hard to cultivate to not be surpassed by her. The mother and daughter fought for some time. Han Qinger had already become a Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal, while Qing Waner was at the perfected Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal realm. Please click here to continue reading your novel. Thank you. Chapter 880 Ultimate God of Punishment and the Divine Might Heavenly Sage. Chapter 880 Ultimate God of Punishment and the Divine Might Heavenly Sage. You're already 100,000 years old, but you're still in such a hurry. What's going on? Hanju stared helplessly at his daughter, who had completely grown up. This girl was still so rash. Indeed, maturity had nothing to do with age or experience. Without experience, she would still be a child even if one was 100,000 years old. Han Qinger suppressed her anger and said aggrievedly, 100,000 years. You're basically locking me up. How can a father be like this? The word lock was used well. Hanju felt a little ashamed. Hanju could cultivate diligently because he died early in his previous life and had a trauma. Han Qinger had no friends since she was young. She didn't suffer at all. In terms of happiness, it was nothing much. Other than not having forced labor, she was no different from a prisoner. Hanju remained silent. He could feel that Han Qinger was really aggrieved. She had always been by her parents' side since she was young. After growing up, she had been locked at home. He probably would not have been able to stand it if it was him in his previous life. Seeing that Hanju didn't finish, Han Qinger's eyes turned red and tears fell like beads. She was so angry that her body trembled. Seeing his daughter cry, Hanju asked, You're already a Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal? Please reading on MYBOX no VL. Calm Han Qinger immediately smiled through her tears and said proudly, "That's right. I'm powerful, right? Not bad, but not as good as me. TCH. Then, what was your cultivation level when you were 100,000 years old?" Han Qinger was diverted by him and asked unhappily. Han Ju said seriously, "You might not believe me, but I had already attained the Tao at 100,000 years old." Indeed not. Han Qinger curled her lips, feeling that her father was bragging. Although she knew that her father was very powerful, she did not know his identity. Ever since she was born, she had never seen her father attack, so she naturally did not know his strength. Han Ju smiled and said, "Cultivate beside me. You will gain powerful abilities. Father won't stop you wherever you want to go. You have to know that this is something that all the living beings in the heavenly Tao don't dare to hope for. The other cultivators wander around because their cultivation has encountered a bottleneck. They need opportunities in Tao techniques. You don't need them." Han Qinger snorted. The Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal Realm is already very strong in the immortal world. Won't it be fine as long as I don't provoke those existences who surpass the Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal Realm? Han Ju smiled. He couldn't say that this girl was naive. At this moment, a notification appeared in front of him. "The ultimate god of punishment sent you a dream. Do you accept?" Was this fellow finally unable to sit still? Han Ju chatted with Han Qinger while asking the system, "Will I be in danger if I accept the ultimate god of punishment's dream?" He would definitely not die. He was afraid that this fellow wanted to scheme against him. 1 trillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. No good. Han Ju secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he left a wisp of his will to chat with Han Qinger and entered the dream. The dream was a void. Han Ju saw the ultimate god of punishment. This fellow did not look like the leader of the divine spirits. He looked more like a god of slaughter, who had killed his way out of the abyss. He wore blood-stained armor and had disheveled hair. His eyes were also sharp. The two of them sized each other up. The ultimate god of punishment was the first to speak, as expected of the divine might heavenly sage. "I can't see through you. No wonder you can force the primordial ancestor god into a corner." Who is the primordial ancestor god? The previous leader of the divine spirits. I see. Then, I only forced the primordial ancestor god to be helpless, but you killed him. The ultimate god of punishment was not fooled by his flattery. He smiled faintly. "Not to mention 20,000 divine authority generals. Just 10,000 is enough to suppress me." Apart from his cultivation level being top-notch among the great Tao sages, the divine authority generals could also use the power of the divine authority when combined. It was the power of the supreme rules. Back then, the ultimate god of punishment was suppressed by the primordial ancestor god with 10,000 divine authority generals. That was the first time the divine authority generals had attacked and suppressed the ultimate god of punishment for 1 trillion years. Speaking of which, it was all thanks to Han Ju that the ultimate god of punishment could escape. The divine authority generals seemed undying and indestructible, but they required the dermic powers of the primordial ancestor god to be activated. The divine authority general was only a power that the primordial ancestor god borrowed from the supreme rules. If not for the primordial ancestor god, the divine authority generals would not have been born at all, much less attack the chaotic life forms. Han Ju asked, "Why did the leader of the divine spirits come to me?" The ultimate god of punishment said, "I want to tell you that the chaos I control is different from the past. The heavenly Tao will no longer be targeted. The divine spirits of the ancient sects, led by the primordial ancestor god, are afraid of being surpassed by all living beings, so they always think of ways to suppress the latecomers. However, I'm different. I want the entire chaos to develop and constantly surpass the past. It might even reach a new realm. You should be able to see that there is a blank domain outside the chaos. In the long years, I discovered that the chaos has been expanding. I can't see its limit. No one knows how big the blank domain is. I want to see the limit of the chaos." The ultimate god of punishment smiled, his eyes filled with spirit. It had to be said that his words were infectious. His tone was filled with confidence and heroism. Hanju said, "That's naturally a good thing. The chaos doesn't target the heavenly Tao, so the heavenly Tao naturally won't become enemies with the chaos. I only want to cultivate in peace. I wouldn't have made a move if not for the enemy attacking at my door." Although Hanju was not afraid of the ultimate god of punishment, it was better to avoid trouble. There was no need to make enemies. The chaos will be peaceful if you and I can reach a consensus. It will be the blessing of all living beings. Hanju said, "I don't deserve it. How can I affect all the living beings in the chaos? I'm only a Tao pursuer. I don't want fame and fortune. I only want to pursue the Tao. It's the fortune of all living beings in the chaos to have a god like you." So tired. Why did they have to flatter each other? Hanju was too embarrassed to say anything. After all, he wouldn't hit a smiling person. It was obvious that the ultimate god of punishment wanted to please him. It would be perfect if it was really as he said. Your son was promoted by the primordial ancestor god. His intention was to scheme against you. But I won't. This child's tenacity has already obtained my recognition. He'll reach our level sooner or later. The reason I set up the 5 great divine punishers is not as simple as supervising the great Tao divine spirits. I want to support the juniors. We need fresh blood and more geniuses to protect the chaos, the ultimate god of punishment said with a confiding expression. Hanju almost believed him. Hanju asked, "Protect the chaos? What else can threaten the chaos? The primordial fiend celestial?" The ultimate god of punishment shook his head and smiled. Primordial fiend celestial? That's only a rumor. However, the primordial chaos does exist. The ones who threaten the chaos are naturally the primordial life forms. The primordial chaos was destroyed, the chaos was born, and all the primordial life forms died. However, their grudges have always existed. They're at the bottom of the chaos, firmly suppressed, so they can't harm the chaos. I was suppressed by the primordial ancestor god under the chaos previously, and have seen the primordial vengeful spirits. Although they're only vengeful spirits and can't threaten me, they can't be destroyed. This is the possibility of harming the chaos. By the way, the birth of the inauspicious evil came from these primordial vengeful spirits. A long time ago, during the battle of the 3,000 fiend celestials, the chaotic cheese providence weakened. A primordial vengeful spirit escaped and transformed into an inauspicious evil. It constantly absorbed negative karma and grudges to strengthen itself into a race. Please click here to continue reading your novel. Thank you. Chapter 8 10 Absolutes of the Chaos, Eternal Peak. Chapter 8 10 Absolutes of the Chaos, Eternal Peak. Primordial Vengeful Spirit. Hanju narrowed his eyes and fell into deep thought. He was not afraid. In any case, the ultimate god of punishment had already said that these primordial vengeful spirits could not threaten him, so they were even less his match. However, existence represented a possibility that could not be ignored. Hanju asked, "There's no way to eliminate the primordial vengeful spirits under the chaos forever?" The ultimate god of punishment shook his head. "I'm also looking. Not for the time being." His tone changed as he said, "I plan to set up a chaotic assembly, and I want to join forces with you. With your reputation and my authority, I will attract the chaotic geniuses to participate. I will provide all sorts of opportunities to reward the outstanding geniuses in the meeting. I'll set this event as 3 stages. The first round is below the chaos. It's ranked by killing the primordial vengeful spirits. In the second stage, we will decide on the 10 absolutes of the chaos. They'll become the 10 absolutes of the chaos through one-on-one battles. They can become great Tao divine spirits and enjoy the great Tao. In the third round, we will decide the eternal peak of the chaos. They can become a divine punisher and obtain a region." Hanju felt that this was a good thing. At least, this could promote the development of the prodigies. Those mighty figures would definitely use all means to nurture geniuses in order to obtain these generous rewards. Please reading on MYB no VEL. Hanju asked, "What's the threshold? What's the deadline?" The ultimate god of punishment smiled. Anyone with a lifespan below 100 million years can participate. It will be held once every 10 million years. How about that? Hanju narrowed his eyes. 100 great Tao divine spirits will appear every 100 million years. He felt that it was a little fast. The ultimate god of punishment said, "There are indeed very few great Tao divine spirits. They're far from enough compared to the entire chaos. I will grade them and confer them authority, allowing the chaos to establish order." Hanju was impressed. It had to be said that this fellow was indeed ambitious, and dared to do it. "I have to go with my main body?" Hanju asked hesitantly. The ultimate god of punishment smiled. "Of course not. Be it clones or will. It's fine as long as you come. Heavenly Sage, you're the strongest person in the chaos. Only your presence can attract geniuses. Of course, it's even better if you're willing to participate. You're very qualified." Hanju shook his head. "Forget it, I won't participate. I can watch the battle." It was fine as long as it was not the main body. The ultimate god of punishment laughed. "I'm just saying, who dares to fight for the eternal peak of the chaos, after hearing that you're participating?" Hanju narrowed his eyes and asked, "Do you think there are stronger existences above us?" The ultimate god of punishment was silent. Seeing this, Hanju knew that he had already sensed it. "So, I'm not the only one who feels this way. In the past, I thought that the primordial ancestor god was the strongest, but I kept feeling uneasy after he died. The supreme rules are so powerful. What are we in front of them?" The ultimate god of punishment sighed. He stepped forward and recounted his encounter. Hanju's question pulled the relationship between the two sides closer. They chatted for an hour before ending the dream. Hanju also obtained a favorable impression of the ultimate god of punishment, but it was not high, only 3 stars. His will returned to his body. Han Qinger was still arguing with him, wanting to travel to the immortal world. Hanju said, "I'll let you out when you reach the pseudo-sage realm. Before that, I'll teach you some mystical powers." A pseudo-sage was the ceiling in the immortal world. Han Qinger wouldn't encounter danger with this cultivation. Han Qinger's face fell. From a zenith heaven golden immortal to a pseudo-sage, she had to cultivate for at least 10,000 years. Hanju suddenly preached the Tao, and covered Han Qinger with the great Tao of extreme origin to let her comprehend the Tao. Han Qinger was unable to resist. In a daze, she entered a state of Tao comprehension, and her body instinctively began to meditate. This lecture lasted for 100 years. After comprehending the Tao for 100 years, Han Qinger's temperament had transformed. She opened her eyes. Her eyes were a little unfocused, but they quickly became clear and firm. She said in surprise, "Father, your mystical powers are so powerful." Many mystical powers appeared in her mind. Not only that, but her cultivation level also increased greatly. Hanju felt very comfortable. This girl had always been so rude in the past, but she was respectful to him today. "Now you know how powerful I am. Are you confident in cultivating to the pseudo-sage realm?" Hanju asked. Han Qinger nodded, and left like a gust of wind. She was clearly more interested in cultivation after this Tao comprehension. Hanju smiled in satisfaction. This was more like his daughter. She had to have a desire to be strong even if she was a woman. He checked the emails to see what was going on in his circle of friends. It had been a long time since he had read the emails. Your disciple Tao Sovereign was attacked by an inauspicious evil. X69093682. Your disciple Zhao Xianyuan. Your good friend Huang Zuantian has absorbed the providence of more than 10,000 calamity life controllers and become their master. Your good friend Jing Tiangong has comprehended the great Tao of darkness. His cultivation has increased greatly. Your son Han Tua was attacked by the great Tao Divine Punisher, X3. Your good friend Yi Tian was attacked by the great Tao Divine Punisher X3. Your good friend Evil Heavenly Emperor has transformed his blood essence into descendants and comprehended a great mystical power. Your good friend Foolish Sword Sage was attacked by a mysterious mighty figure. Tao Sovereign, Zhao Xianyuan, Jiang Yi, and Lao Dan were still being beaten. Huang Zuantian's opportunity was within Hanju's expectations. This kid would soar sooner or later. The evil heavenly emperor's commotion attracted Hanju's attention. Blood essence transformed into descendants? What was he doing? Hanju pinched his fingers to deduce. The evil heavenly emperor actually created 20,000 descendants and allowed them to control the world that the heavenly court had attacked. It felt like he was conferring the title of vassal king. Unknowingly, the evil heavenly emperor had already reached the perfected freedom sage realm. The evil heavenly emperor seemed not far from attaining the Tao. Hanju continued reading the emails with relish. 5 minutes later, he entered his cultivation state again. Year after year passed. Han Qing'er's cultivation improved by leaps and bounds while Hanju was in seclusion. Her cultivation speed soared after being led to the great Tao of extreme origin. Han Qing'er was obsessed with cultivation after experiencing the feeling of quickly becoming stronger. Of course, it was not only the profundity of the great Tao of extreme origin. When Hanju preached the Tao, he also removed Han Qing'er's potential seal. She also inherited a fiend celestial Dharma idol in the depths of her soul. As for what it was, she had to comprehend it herself. 50,000 years later, Han Qing'er finally stepped into the pseudo-sage realm. She didn't immediately go to find Hanju. Instead, she was immersed in the comprehension of the pseudo-sage realm. Her divine sense soared, and she could already observe the entire universe of stars. She discovered that this was not the heavenly Tao at all. There was no sign of the immortal world inside or outside the universe, let alone the myriad worlds below the immortal world. At this moment, she suddenly discovered that there were two other people in this universe. They were Liu Bei and Jiang Juesher. Jiang Juesher couldn't hide his figure and aura after being attacked by the inauspicious evil. It was to scare away the experts who wanted to invade the universe. Who? Jiang Juesher's cold shout entered Han Qing'er's ears, scaring her so much that her guts almost ruptured and her soul trembled. Han Qing'er's beautiful eyes widened in disbelief. Who was the other party? Just the other party's voice caused her to feel an unprecedented fear. Chapter 882 Jiang Juesher's Attitude, Heavenly Sage's Daughter. Chapter 882 Jiang Juesher's Attitude. Heavenly Sage's daughter Han Qing'er retracted her divine sense in fear. She was so nervous that her body stiffened. She felt like she was in trouble. Would it attract trouble? She recalled what she had seen in the immortal world. A cultivator had said that sometimes a divine sense would attract death if it accidentally provoked a mighty figure. She recalled the terrifying feeling just now and became more and more afraid. She hesitated for a moment, but still decided to find Hanju. She entered the Taoist temple and called out carefully, "Father." Han Qing'er stopped in front of Hanju, but he ignored her, making her even more anxious. On the other side, in a star, Jiang Juesher asked in surprise, "Why does this universe have divine sense? Furthermore, I can't even deduce where it is?" Liu Bei knew that it was the commotion of the third Tao field. He thought for a moment and said, "Actually, there's a master in this universe." Jiang Juesher's expression changed drastically. Liu Bei hurriedly said, "You don't have to worry. The mighty figure who created this universe is an ascetic. He has surpassed the great Tao sage realm and is a supreme existence in the chaos. He has already handed the universe to me. I'm the master of this universe." Jiang Juesher's expression softened. "What's this mighty figure's name?" Liu Bei shook his head. "I can't say. I can't please reading on myb ox novel com say." Jiang Juesher frowned. "Then my arrival," Liu Bei said meaningfully. "It's all fate. That mighty figure predicted that you would come a long time ago. He said that this will be the place where you will soar. Your future is immeasurable. One day, he will help you reach the peak of the chaos and look down on the endless divine spirits and mighty figures." Jiang Juesher was flattered. He had been here for so long and had not sensed the other party's existence. He naturally would not question the other party's cultivation. As were the mighty figures in the chaos were immeasurable. Jiang Juesher thought for a moment and felt that he was ridiculous. There was no absolute peace in the chaos. He had been to many places before coming to the universe of stars. They were either barren or occupied by mighty figures. Since this mighty figure admired him, why not stay and rely on him in the future? No matter where he was, he had to have a backing. Otherwise, he could only be a rat running around. Forget it. The coldness on Jiang Juesher's face dissipated. He sighed and continued cultivating. Liu Bei knew that he had let down his guard, so he smiled and did not say anything else. It wasn't good to say too much. Everything depended on time. He believed that Jiang Juesher knew what to do. He had a clear conscience. In the third Dao field, Han Qing'er stayed for an hour before leaving, no longer disturbing Han Ju's cultivation. She returned to the tree. Qingwan'er opened her eyes and asked, "Why are you in a hurry to find your father? Didn't I say not to disturb his cultivation?" Han Qing'er curled her lips and hesitated for a moment, but she still told her what had happened. She was afraid that hiding this matter would cause a calamity. Qingwan'er couldn't help but laugh. Han Qing'er was furious. "Mother, what are you laughing at? Do you think I'm lying to you?" Qingwan'er shook her head. "No, I believe you. However, the cultivators in this universe are not enemies. They're actually your father's disciples." Ah! Qingwan'er was stunned. Disciples? She was dumbfounded. How terrifying was Jiang Juesher's voice. She even thought that her father might not be his match. She didn't expect him to be her father's disciple. She hurriedly asked, "Mother, why didn't father bring them in? He didn't mention them either." "Your father has many disciples. Aren't you uninterested in his story? He has told you many things since you were young, but you always avoid him and argue alone. Blame yourself if you want to blame someone." Qingwan'er shook her head with a mocking expression. Han Qing'er thought about it carefully and agreed. She became interested in Jiang Juesher and started to ask about him. Qingwan'er did not hide anything. The current Han Qing'er was already a pseudo-sage. She should know the higher realms. Han Qing'er was stunned after she finished speaking Freedom Sage. 2 realms higher than her. It was a major realm. No wonder she was so afraid. Han Qing'er asked excitedly, "Is he the most powerful disciple under father?" This time, Qingwan'er was in a dilemma. She really did not know. "I only know that this Jiang Juesher doesn't know of your father's existence. I believe that your father has other disciples. Back then, there were countless disciples in the 100-Peak Immortal River when we went to see your aunt." Qingwan'er sighed. Speaking of which, she didn't know Han Ju very well. Han Ju was also mysterious to her. However, he was still her husband no matter how mysterious he was. Han Ju had been unfathomable from the first time they met. She was already used to it. Han Qing'er continued to ask like a curious baby. Time passed. Year after year passed. Another 100,000 years passed. Han Ju opened his eyes and frowned. Then he smiled in satisfaction. He was about to break through after another seclusion cycle. He sent a voice transmission to Han Qing'er. She quickly arrived. Her cultivation level had already reached the late-stage pseudo-sage realm, and was already close to the primordial chaos zenith heaven golden immortal realm. "Father! Father!" Han Qing'er called out excitedly. She went to Han Ju's side, and started to rub his shoulders with a fawning smile. Han Ju said, "You want to return to the immortal world?" "Can I?" Han Qing'er asked carefully. Han Ju stood up and smiled. "Of course. I'll bring you there today." "Really?" "Yes, go say goodbye to your mother. I don't know when you'll return." "All right." Han Qing'er turned around and left. Qingwan'er was with her when she returned. "Husband, we can't let her leave. Otherwise she'll be like Tuor," Qingwan'er said anxiously. Han Qing'er said helplessly, "Mother, I'm already 200,000 years old. Don't always treat me like a child. You followed my father when you were 20. How can you trap me?" Qingwan'er choked, not knowing how to persuade her. Han Ju said, "That's all. My children and grandchildren will take care of themselves." "Thank you, father." Han Qing'er was extremely excited. Han Ju teleported away with her. Qingwan'er felt desolate as she looked at the empty Taoist temple. She suddenly understood how her parents felt when they saw her leave. In the 100-Peak Immortal River, Han Ju and Han Qing'er appeared, and came to the 33rd heaven. Heavenly Venerate Xian, Du sent a voice transmission to the will left in the 100-Peak Immortal River several years ago, inviting him to the Universal Hall. The father and daughter arrived in front of the Universal Hall. Han Qing'er asked, "Why are we here? Do you want to see little you?" Han Ju didn't say anything and walked towards the door. It opened, and Han Qing'er hurriedly followed him inside. The father and daughter came in front of Heavenly Venerate Xian Du after entering the hall. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du stood up and bowed. Then he sent a voice transmission to the sages. He looked at Han Qing'er and sighed. The Heavenly Sage's daughter is indeed extraordinary. She's already a pseudo-sage. Han Ju and Han Qing'er looked similar, and their auras were also similar. This is my daughter Han Qing'er. Greet Heavenly Venerate Xian Du. Han Ju introduced them briefly. Hearing this, Han Qing'er hurriedly bowed. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du? The leader of the Heavenly Tao sages? Han Qing'er was shocked. She had heard of the legends of Heavenly Venerate Xian Du and the Divine Might Heavenly Sage when she traveled the immortal world 200,000 years ago. Heavenly Sage's daughter. Chapter 883 Father's Might. Chapter 883 Father's Might. While Han Qing'er was shocked and curious, Han Ju and Heavenly Venerate Xian Du sat down side by side. Han Ju waved at her, signaling her to stand behind him. One sage after another arrived. Every sage had to bow to Han Ju and Heavenly Venerate Xian Du after they entered the hall. Han Qing'er was secretly surprised. She was already a pseudo-sage, but she couldn't see through their cultivation levels. What were they if they were not sages? All the sages arrived not long after. Even the foolish sword sage, great sage Void Soul, and Red Fate came. It was rare to see Han Ju, so they naturally wouldn't miss it. The foolish sword sage stared at Han Ju with flickering eyes. He wanted to challenge him, but he was still not confident when he saw him again. The sages noticed Han Qing'er behind Han Ju and guessed. Han Qing'er was immediately happy when she saw Han Yu. She winked at him, making Han Yu feel quite embarrassed. Long Hao asked curiously, "Master, who is this behind you?" "Master." Han Qing'er's eyes lit up as she sized him up. Was this also her father's disciple? Please reading on MYBOXNOVEL. Calm Han Ju said. This is my daughter Han Qing'er. She has cultivated for 200,000 years and has become a pseudo-sage. The sages praised Han Qing'er's talent. This was the first time the new sages saw Han Ju. They were already in awe. They couldn't help but sigh when they heard that the potential of the Heavenly Sage's daughter was so terrifying. Achieving the pseudo-sage realm at 200,000 years old was also a top genius in the entire immortal world. For a time, the sages became active. Wouldn't their relationship with the Divine Might Heavenly Sage improve if they could take Han Qing'er as their disciple? Heavenly Venerate Xian Du looked around and said, I called you here today for a huge matter that can affect the entire chaos. This is also an opportunity for the Heavenly Tao. Indeed, they were all Heavenly Tao sages. Then, was her father the legendary Divine Might Heavenly Sage who had repeatedly protected the Heavenly Tao? Han Qing'er was so excited that she felt unreal. She often heard legends about the Divine Might Heavenly Sage when she traveled the immortal world in the past. Divine Might guarded the Heavenly Tao and Xian Du ruled all living beings. This sentence spread the most. It was enough to prove the Divine Might Heavenly Sage's importance and status to the Heavenly Tao. It was very difficult for Han Qing'er to associate the Divine Might Heavenly Sage with her father. The legendary Divine Might Heavenly Sage was peerlessly powerful and domineering. He looked down on all the mighty forces in the chaos. How majestic was that? Han Qing'er couldn't help but look at Han Ju. Her father did not look domineering apart from being good-looking. The leader of the divine spirits and our Heavenly Sage will jointly hold the chaotic assembly. All living beings below 100 million years old can participate and decide the top 10 of the chaos, and the top in history. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du glanced at Han Ju and slowly said. It was the same as what Han Ju had learned from the ultimate god of punishment. The sages were all excited and looked at him. The hall exploded upon seeing Han Ju nod. In that case, the leader of the divine spirits has acknowledged that the Heavenly Sage is on the same level as him. That should be the case. No matter how strong the leader of the divine spirits is, can he be stronger than 20,000 divine authority generals? No wonder the 5 great divine punishers came. So that's their plan. This is a good thing. Once the event succeeds, not only can we choose geniuses and give the juniors a great Tao, But we can also establish the status of the heavenly sage in the chaos, comparable to the leader of the divine spirits. Is there a need to? Who dares to question the strongest in the chaos? The heavenly Tao has so many geniuses. Let the chaos see our foundation. The sages were extremely heroic and became more and more excited. The inner sect of the heavenly Tao was in full bloom. Stunning geniuses would appear every 10,000 years. How could the other worlds and domains in the chaos compare? The strongest in the chaos? Han Qing'er looked at Han Ju's back in surprise. Father is so powerful. She also knew that the chaos was endless. To be called the strongest, how strong was he? No wonder his disciple was a freedom sage. Han Qing'er's expression became strange. My father is the strongest, so why should I cultivate? Who can harm me? Han Qing'er thought about Han Ju's attitude. Perhaps all living beings thought that he was the strongest, but in fact, there was an existence that made him extremely afraid. It was precisely because of this that he had been in seclusion. Han Qing'er looked at him with admiration and reverence. After thinking it through, the father who accompanied her was actually so noble. Thinking about herself, she actually wanted to play. Han Qing'er suddenly found a goal. It was definitely not to have fun. She wanted to become a great existence like her father. The chaotic assembly will begin in 10 million years. The sages can prepare. To participate in such a meeting, a sage will definitely have to appear. It will be embarrassing if we send a pseudo-sage. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du said seriously. The sages nodded, and their eyes burned with anticipation. This was not just to win honor for the heavenly Tao. One could become a great Tao divine spirit after entering the chaotic 10 absolutes. The heavenly Tao sage only cared about the heavenly Tao in the end. The great Tao divine spirits cared about the chaos. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du said. Second, the heavenly Tao has 2 more sage positions. They would have directly decided if it was in the past. But Han Ju was here today, so they had to seek his opinion. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du looked at him. Han Ju said, a position should be given to Yang Tiandong. Very direct. Han Qing'er was secretly nervous. Wasn't her father afraid of offending the other sages? Although he was the strongest, hidden enemies could always plot in the dark. Wasn't he afraid of being abandoned by everyone? Good. Amazing. That Yang Tiandong is indeed impressive. He managed the order of the netherworld in an orderly manner. The netherworld will probably not be convinced if he isn't a sage. As expected of a heavenly sage, he immediately chose the most suitable candidate. Yang Che clapped in admiration. Su Dudao added, that's right. Sages don't only talk about talent, cultivation and achievements. We control the heavenly Tao not because of cultivation, but because of our overall vision and Tao heart that thinks for all living beings. Qiu Shilai, Sect Master Tianju, Pan Xian, Heavenly Venerate Wufa, and the others began to flatter him. Han Ju's disciples were stunned. They cursed them for being shameless and hurriedly flattered him. How could they let outsiders flatter their own master? The new sages looked at each other. They were extremely uncomfortable, but they didn't dare to question it. The foolish sword sage was calm. He felt that this was very normal. If not for Han Ju, the heavenly Tao would be nothing. He could destroy the heavenly Tao with a single strike. Han Qing'er looked at the scene in front of her, and did not know whether to laugh or cry. She also saw clearly how important Han Ju was in the heavenly Tao. He was even more important than Heavenly Venerate Xian Du. Han Ju only wanted one sage position, and let them fight for the remaining one. Sages were sages after all. They had to be reasonable, and would not fight until their faces turned red. After the sage position was finalized, Heavenly Venerate Xian Du mentioned the development of the heavenly Tao. Recently, the 3 pure sacred world vaguely showed signs of going against the heavenly Tao. Other than poaching geniuses, the cultivators of the 2 sides conflicted when they wandered in the chaos. The heavenly Tao, and the 3 pure sacred world, wanted to become the center of this chaotic domain. But 2 tigers could not share one mountain. The 3 pure sacred world had great Tao sages and Laozi. Laozi had established the sword Tao, and was the Tao ancestor's eldest disciple. Although his reputation was inferior to the divine might heavenly sage, the difference was not too great. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du looked at Han Ju and asked, What if the heavenly Tao and the three pure sacred world conflict? Hanju said casually. You're not even afraid of it. Why ask me? Heavenly Venerate Xian Du immediately knew what was going on. The foolish sword sage became excited. Does the divine might heavenly sage want to fight Laozi? Chapter 884 Change of Nature, Mysterious Stone Tablet. Chapter 884 Change of Nature. Mysterious Stone Tablet. Hanju's words were very casual, but they were domineering in the ears of the sages. This was the divine might heavenly sage. He wasn't afraid of anyone. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du smiled and said, I'm naturally not afraid. The one in charge of the three pure sacred world is the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. As for my master, he's in seclusion all year round. I'll still choose the heavenly Tao if we really force him to attack. Hanju nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. Then, Heavenly Venerate Xian Du instructed some things. The sages dispersed after they discussed and finalized. Hanju stood up, and Han Qing'er followed closely behind. Long Hao, Ji Xianshan, Fang Liang, Han Yu, Qin Ling, and the other sages of the hidden sect surrounded him. They began to get close to Han Qing'er. Han Qing'er was flattered. She didn't expect so many senior brothers, junior disciples, and even grand disciples to be hidden among the sages. Hanju snorted. Take care of her when she appears in the heavenly Tao in the future. Otherwise I'll punish you. None of you can escape. The other sages had yet to walk out of the universal hall. Their expressions changed, and they remembered these words. They weren't stupid. They knew that Hanju was also pointing at them. Father, I'm a pseudo-sage. Who in the immortal world can hurt me? Han Qing'er refused to listen and said coquettishly. However, she was happy in her heart. It had been a long time since she felt such fatherly love, making her touched and ashamed. She was very ashamed upon thinking of her complaints about her father. Hanju smiled and didn't reply. Please reading on MYBOXNOVEL. Calm the disciples promised. Red Fate twisted her waist and walked in front of Han Qing'er. She chuckled and said, Heavenly Sage, why don't you let me take your daughter as my disciple? I'll definitely teach her all my Tao techniques. With that said, the expressions of the sages who wanted to take Han Qing'er in as their disciple changed drastically, but they did not dare to fight her. After all, Red Fate was a great Tao sage. She could suppress them with one hand. Han Qing'er was stunned by Red Fate's appearance and temperament. She instinctively felt threatened, not for herself, but for her mother. She subconsciously looked at her father. Hanju's expression didn't change as he said, Let's see what this girl thinks. Han Qing'er said, Father, I shouldn't go to the immortal world. I plan to cultivate with you for 1,000,000 years, before going out to train. Hanju looked at her in surprise and saw that she was serious. He was relieved. It seemed that the fortuitous encounter had made her understand. Hanju waved his sleeve and disappeared with Han Qing'er. Red Fate sighed in pity. The primordial heavenly prison made her loyal to Hanju, but it didn't erase her thoughts about him. She had always wanted to become Tao companions with Hanju, but she couldn't force it since she was a servant now. Red Fate shook her head and disappeared. The hidden sect disciples were still discussing Han Qing'er. They were still very curious about this little junior sister. The news would probably spread throughout the hidden sect soon. On the other side, Hanju brought Han Qing'er back to the third Tao field. Father, aren't we going to see eldest mother and second mother? Han Qing'er asked curiously. Hanju said, They have to cultivate too. Don't disturb them if you don't have anything to say to them. To us, we don't lack time. Han Qing'er felt that it made sense. She hugged his right arm and said coquettishly, Father, can you tell me your story again? She was very curious about her father after this incident. Hanju didn't hide anything and told her his story again. Unlike Qingwaner, he still wanted to show off to his daughter. Therefore, he deliberately emphasized their strength when he mentioned those enemies. Han Qing'er sometimes exclaimed. Hanju finished speaking several hours later. It had to be said that although he had not experienced much, every single one of his experiences was a major event. Any one of them could be written into a novel. Furthermore, he had yet to talk about the Dark Forbidden Lord. Looking at Han Qing'er again, this girl was already full of admiration. making Hanju extremely happy. Father, you're so powerful. I want to become someone like you. I want to cultivate well, and always be stronger than my enemies. Han Qinger said excitedly, as if she had found her goal. Hanju smiled. That's fine. When your brother comes back in the future, I'll let the two of you fight. At that time, you have to defeat him, and let him understand that home is still the best. Han Qinger said proudly, don't worry about my potential. With that, she waved her hand and left. Hanju shook his head and laughed. He sat on the mat and started cultivating. Next was to break through. Under the old tree, Qingwaner felt a gust of wind. She opened her eyes and saw her daughter standing in front of her. Qinger, why are you back? Qingwaner asked in surprise. Han Qinger smiled and said, Mother, I understand. Cultivating is more important. She didn't explain further. She walked to the side and sat down to cultivate. Qingwaner looked at her in a daze. For some reason, she saw Hanju's shadow on her daughter. It was not her looks but a feeling. She was curious. What method did Hanju use to change Han Qinger's personality? In the dark void, a dilapidated huge wooden ship advanced. It seemed like an invisible beast was pulling the ship. The 5 divine punishers were cultivating on the ship. Etian was feeling bored when he suddenly saw Han Tua smiling secretly. What are you laughing at? You look so cheap. Etian yawned and asked casually. Han Tua rolled his eyes and said, I learned something in the chaotic domain just now. I have a younger sister. Etian immediately perked up when he heard that. What's our sister's name? What sister? Hihi, I'm your big brother. Hihi, tell me. Her name is Han Qinger. She was born 200,000 years ago. And she's already a pseudo-sage. She's cultivating beside my father. Impressive. As expected of Godfather's child. Ask your senior brothers when Godfather will acknowledge me. Etian scratched his head. They longer had enemies after becoming one of the 5 great divine punishers. Any existence would have to humble themselves when they saw them. For a time, he lost his goal and felt uncomfortable. He always looked for the other 3 divine punishers to fight. Becoming the divine spirit son of the divine might heavenly sage had become the thing Etian looked forward to the most. Han Tua snorted. My senior brothers are also wandering outside. How can I ask them? That's true. Dao's sovereign, Zhao Xinyuan, and Jiang Yi are causing trouble everywhere. Many great Dao divine spirits have already accused them. Speaking of which, they owe me a favor. Etian smiled and rolled his eyes. It was unknown what he was thinking. Han Tua was about to speak when the huge wooden ship suddenly trembled. The divine punishers stood up one after another. Han Tua was the same. He frowned and looked ahead. A huge stone tablet appeared in the darkness. It was riddled with holes. A terrifying wind blew, resisting the wooden ship. What the hell is that? Etian asked in a low voice. There were countless holes on the huge stone tablet, and they seemed to be crawling. They looked like worms and bones. Looking ghastly and terrifying, Han Tuo's heart beat faster for some reason. An uneasiness that had not appeared for a long time surged in his heart. Chapter 885 Breakthrough to the Mid-Stage, Fighting 25,000 Foolish Sword Sages. Chapter 885 Breakthrough to the Mid-Stage, Fighting 25,000 Foolish Sword Sages. Prepare for battle. Han Tua said in a low voice. He raised his right hand, and a terrifying black shadow condensed on his body, as if Hanju was using the Grand Unity aspect. The other 4 divine punishers were also prepared to fight. Their gazes landed on the huge stone tablet in front of them. Figures were surging from the countless caves. More and more appeared, as if it was an ant nest or a race was hidden inside. At this moment, blood words appeared on the surface of the stone tablet and interwove between the various holes. They were dense and made one's scalp tingle. Chaotic Fiend Celestial. Very good, you suit me very well. A cold voice sounded. The language was strange, but the 5 great divine punishers were strong and could understand what he meant. Han Tua raised his eyebrows and shouted, Kill this thing. The 5 great divine punishers attacked together. Dermic power shook the void. 5 divine lights of different colors collided with the huge stone tablet and emitted a dazzling light that swept in all directions, causing the void to lose all color. In the third Tao field, Hanju focused on cultivating. The primordial world in the depths of his soul continued to expand. His supreme power strengthened, and his understanding of the power of creation deepened. Hanju was in his 70,000th year of seclusion when he finally welcomed the opportunity to break through. He began to break through. He successfully broke through 5,000 years later. Mid-stage Great Tao Supreme Realm. Reading on Mybos.com, please. Hanju smiled. He finally broke through. He checked the emails. Name: Hanju. Lifespan: 5,425,122.90. 039. 999. 999. 999. 999. 999. 999. 999. 999. 999,999,999,999,999. Race: Primordial Fiend Celestial, Immeasurable Emperor. Cultivation: Mid-stage Great Tao Supreme Realm, Perfect Sage. Technique: Primordial Chaos Reincarnation Great Tao, Heavenly Cycle Body Tempering, Great Tao of Life and Death, Great Tao of Karma, Great Tao of Extreme Origin. His lifespan had increased by 9 times. Hanju was in a good mood. It was a surprise as usual. Who would mind living longer? Hanju began to consolidate his cultivation. 3,000 years later, his cultivation finally stabilized. He began to improve his mystical power next. 500 years later, Hanju learned 500 new Fiend Celestial Dharma idols. He had 2,449 now. He was already very close to the 3,000 Fiend Celestial Dharma idols. However, there was still no Tao of creation among these Fiend Celestial Dharma idols. Hanju opened his eyes and started the simulation trial. It was still the Foolish Sword Sage. The Foolish Sword Sage of the Great Tao Supreme Realm was still stronger than the Divine Authority Generals. He was very suitable as a template. Hanju challenged 10,000 Foolish Sword Sages in one go. Instant kill. As expected, Hanju's combat strength would increase greatly every time he broke through a minor realm. How terrifying was that when 2,449 Fiend Celestial Dharma idols fused together. They crushed everything in their path and directly killed 10,000 Foolish Sword Sages. Hanju continued to challenge 20,000 Foolish Sword Sages. Hanju found it difficult this time. He didn't win even after fighting for an hour. He was not discouraged. Instead, he was excited. Only with difficulties could one have fighting spirit. Several days later, Hanju opened his eyes and was satisfied. His limit was 25,000 Foolish Sword Sages. It was already very terrifying. After all, the Foolish Sword Sage was also a Great Tao Supreme. The chaos would collapse if such a battle really happened. The current chaos could not withstand so many Great Tao supremacies. Hanju wanted to curse the enemy to celebrate, but he suddenly didn't know who to curse. The enemies were either dead or hiding. No one dared to provoke him on the surface. Hanju felt inexplicably regretful. He was afraid of having too many enemies in the past, but now, he hoped that there would be too many. He couldn't use his mystical powers without an enemy. Looks like my Tao heart still needs refinement. Hanju muttered to himself with firm eyes. He thought about ninth chaos, about the chaotic consciousness, and then about the formless transcendent deity. He still had a long way to go. Hanju checked the emails. The recent circle of friends was not peaceful anymore. It was mainly Han Tua, Tao Sovereign, and Huang Zuentian. Hanju suddenly noticed that the evil heavenly emperor and ancestor Shitian had been very well behaved recently, as if they had disappeared. These two leaders were both ambitious and must be plotting something. Hanju called Han Qing'er in after reading the emails for a while. Han Qing'er was stuck at the perfected pseudo-sage realm and could not attain the Tao. It was mainly because she had little experience and her Tao heart was unstable. She didn't find her own Tao. Han Qing'er looked depressed after entering the temple. Father, am I not talented? She thought that her father wanted to scold her about cultivation. After all, she had not broken through in so many years. She was angry. Back then, she had said that she wanted to surpass her brother. Now, it seemed that she had been thinking too much. What was potential below the sage realm? She even wondered if she should go out and seek opportunities. VPN Hanju smiled. Your potential is already good enough. I'll help you attain the Tao. Really? Han Qing'er was pleasantly surprised. Hanju said, You just haven't found your own Tao, but you can cultivate mine. My Tao contains the truths of the 3,000 great Tao. Any Tao is compatible with it. Han Qing'er looked at him in admiration upon hearing this. She pounced into his arms and started to act spoiled. Hanju pushed her away helplessly and said, A woman can't be too close to her father when she grows up. Do you understand? You're no longer a child. You can't be like this in the future. It looks inappropriate. Han Qing'er giggled. What? I'll always be your daughter. Hanju shook his head and laughed. Then he began to preach the Tao. Han Qing'er immediately entered a state of Tao comprehension once his Tao voice sounded. 100 years of preaching passed in a flash. Han Qing'er opened her eyes and exclaimed, What a powerful Tao! Father, what Tao is this? Great Tao of extreme origin. I see many figures walking on this great Tao's path. Who are they? My disciples. They also cultivate this Tao. Those before you are all stronger than you. So many. Han Qing'er was shocked. At that time, she stood on the great Tao of extreme origin and looked forward. She couldn't see the end, but she could see many figures. The distance between them was greater than the Tao pursuer behind her. She asked curiously, Who's the strongest among your disciples? Hanju pondered for a moment and said, Morongqi, my grand disciple. Morongqi had always remained in the first tier of the second Tao field, after becoming a chaotic fiend celestial. His cultivation had already reached the late stage of the freedom sage realm. After him were the heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial, the Crimson Fox, and the others. Tao Sovereign, and the other two were all left behind by a minor realm. Morongqi. Han Qing'er had never heard of this name. She had thought that it was Jiang Jiesher, but she didn't expect that the terrifying Jiang Jiesher could not be ranked first. Where's Jiang Jiesher? Him. He's not in the top 10. His cultivation level has not increased all these years. He's still exploring his own Tao creation. Hanju smiled. He was telling the truth. Jiang Jiesher had broken through too quickly in this life, and needed to settle down. Otherwise his foundation would be unstable. Hanju would personally teach him after some time. At this moment, a black vortex appeared behind Hanju. Han Qing'er widened her eyes, and was about to ask what this was when Hanju stood up and struck out with his palm. A hand that had just emerged from the black vortex was slapped away by him. Hanju sensed carefully. The one who used the invocation technique was Han Tua, but he was chased by the enemy as soon as he used it. It seemed that this kid's enemy was not simple. Chapter 886 Ancestor Shen'in, temporarily dead. Chapter 886 Ancestor Shen'in, temporarily dead. Father, what is this? Han Qing'er asked nervously. This was the first time she had encountered such a situation. She was extremely nervous. Hanju said, Go out and wait. With that, he stepped into the black vortex and activated the supreme treasure on his body. When that hand appeared just now, Hanju had already seen the other party's cultivation. Late-stage Great Tao Primordial Chaos Realm. Hanju focused his attention to prevent the other party from entering the third Tao field from the black vortex. He stepped out of the black vortex and saw a dilapidated void. Lightning interwove, and a majestic stone tablet appeared in front of him. It was covered in caves and terrifying things surged in them. The 5 great divine punishers were tied to the top of the stone tablet by chains and could not move. Hanju immediately used the simulation trial to check his surroundings. Ancestor Shen'in. Perfected Great Tao Primordial Chaos Realm. Chaotic Life Form. Transcendent Tao Expert. Body of Darkness. There was no stronger existence. That meant that Hanju didn't sense anything wrong. Hanju's gaze landed on the top of the stone tablet. A figure stood there. He wore a black robe, and his hair was disheveled. His skin was dry like tree bark, and his face was cold, like a demon that had crawled out of the netherworld. At this moment, Ancestor Shen'in's right arm was slowly recovering. The hand that was destroyed by Hanju was his hand. Reading on mybosnovel.com, please. Ancestor Shinin stared at him in shock and asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" He glanced at Han Tua below. He didn't expect Han Tua to have such a background. Etion roared excitedly, "Godfather! Save us!" "Godfather?" The other three divine punishers were shocked. The legendary divine might heavenly sage. Hanju activated all his supreme treasures, and the divine light was oppressive. In their opinion, his aura was even stronger and more stunning than the ultimate god of punishment. This scene shocked them. Hanju said, "Why did you capture my son?" Ancestor Shinin frowned and asked, "Who's your son? Tell me, I can let him go." Hanju could tell at a glance that these five were the five great divine punishers. He was on good terms with the ultimate god of punishment, and these people were all good friends of Han Tua. He naturally had to save them. Let them all go. Treat it as a misunderstanding, Hanju said seriously. He left a trace of his will in the black vortex to prevent anyone from sneaking in. Ancestor Shinin laughed as if he had heard the funniest joke. He suddenly stared at him and said coldly, "Don't you find it ridiculous?" Hanju sighed and asked, "Did they offend you?" "No." "Then what do you want?" "I naturally want their bodies." Ancestor Shun-in raised his hands, and a strange black aura emitted from the countless holes in the stone tablet. At this moment, he discovered that Hanju was gone. He did not panic. Instead, the corners of his mouth curled up. Hanju appeared behind him and slashed with the primordial judgment sword. Black chi appeared out of thin air and wrapped around Ancestor Shin Yin's body. The primordial judgment sword slashed down, and the black aura dissipated. Ancestor Shin Yin's body was slashed into two. How can this be? Ancestor Shin Yin's expression changed drastically in disbelief. At this moment, a powerful imprisonment power suppressed him, preventing him from moving. Even his soul could not escape. He was shocked to find that he could not mobilize the power of the Great Tao. Impossible. He was a perfected Great Tao sage. He was already a top-notch cultivator in the entire chaos. Who was his match other than those ancient divine spirits? A fiend celestial Dharma idol suddenly rose above Hanju's head and grabbed him with one hand, crushing him. Ancestor Shin-in has developed hatred towards you. Current hatred points, 6 stars. Hanju sensed his surroundings and didn't see Ancestor Shin-in anymore. He had indeed crushed Ancestor Shin-in to death just now. In other words, this fellow had a life-saving method elsewhere. He clicked his tongue in wonder. How dare they be so arrogant with such strength? He thought that Ancestor Shin-in had some special method, but he couldn't withstand a single blow. Hanju waved his sleeve and shattered the chains that locked the 5 divine punishers. He raised his hand and put the huge stone tablet into his sleeve, using his dermic powers to suppress it. He could sense that the stone tablet contained countless living beings. It should be a race, but this race was very strange and did not have any life. Etion heaved a sigh of relief. The other 3 divine punishers looked at Hanju in reverence. Han Tua came in front of him and said with an ashamed expression, "Sorry to trouble you, father." Hanju said, "It's nothing. Leave as soon as possible." With that he vanished. The distant black vortex shrank. A divine punisher looked at Han Tua and sighed. "Boss, your father is really powerful. It's too easy." Ancestor Shin-in, who brought them despair just now, was helpless in front of Hanju. It broadened his horizons. Yes, as expected of the divine might heavenly sage. It's said that the leader of the divine spirits and the divine might heavenly sage are joining forces to hold the chaotic assembly. Doesn't that mean that they are equals? This strength should indeed be equal. He can be the strongest in the chaos. Unfortunately, Godfather left too quickly. He hasn't acknowledged me yet. Hearing his companion's words, Han Tua couldn't help but smile. It had to be said that Hanju gave him enough face. He didn't ask for the reason, and didn't embarrass him. Han Tua sighed. Actually, I didn't want to invite him. We have to be careful in the future. We were still careless previously, and fell into that old fellow's trap. We actually hunted him for 10,000 years. It's ridiculous. The other 4 divine punisher cultivators also looked embarrassed. Etienne coughed. Back then, he was the one who said that he wanted to chase after him when he saw ancestor Shenin escape. They chased for 10,000 years. Thinking back, it was indeed very silly. This place is not simple. Should we investigate? A divine punisher asked. Han Tua scanned the surroundings and said, let's leave first and tell this to the leader of the divine spirits. The 4 divine punisher experts had no objections and quickly left with him. Inside the Taoist temple, Hanju sat down, and the black vortex disappeared. Han Qinger came over and asked, so fast? What happened just now? She was hesitating if she should listen to her father and go out when he returned so quickly. How long had it been? Hanju said. Your brother asked for help, so I went to help him. Han Qinger blinked and asked, it's settled. Did brother encounter an enemy or is he trapped? Both. What about the enemy? He's dead for the time being. What do you mean for the time being? I killed him, but he had a way to revive. Han Qinger was secretly shocked. He could be revived? It seemed that she had to be careful when facing enemies in the future. How could she confirm that the other party was really dead? Hanju said, go out and cultivate. Try to attain the Tao as soon as possible. Han Qinga nodded and couldn't help but ask, then, what's the enemy's cultivation level? Freedom Sage? Or stronger? In her opinion, the enemy who could trap her brother was definitely a Freedom Sage. It was impossible for him to be weaker. Stronger, Hanju said. Han Qinger frowned and left. Hanju was surprised. Why did this girl change her attitude? Shouldn't she be shocked? Sigh. His daughter was older and not as cute as when she was young. Hanju shook his head and laughed. He took out the huge stone tablet after Han Qinger left. Chapter 887 Turbot World Destruction Worm. Chapter 887 Turbot World Destruction Worm. Hanju stared at the stone tablet in his palm. The stone tablet became small under the Supreme Power's control. The dense holes were like countless black spots. It was very strange. His sage sense penetrated the stone tablet. The living beings in the stone tablet were like black worms. Their bodies were surrounded by black mist and looked like ghosts. These living beings did not have intelligence. They surged like ants. The largest of them should be the brood mother, constantly laying eggs. Hanju suddenly exclaimed in surprise. He discovered that the black aura on these black worms could actually devour his sage sense. Although this amount couldn't affect him, it was a fact that it had the ability. He was a great Tao Supreme. Who could stop it if the sage sense of the great Tao could be devoured? Most importantly, these black worms were still young and had yet to mature. He shivered. How terrifying would these black worms' power be if Ancestor Shen Yin nurtured them to a mature state? That was not right. Why would Ancestor Shen Yin bring this tablet to show off if they were so powerful? Hanju asked in his mind. I want to know the origins of this worm. 1 trillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? So expensive. Reading on mybosnovel.com, please. It was already equivalent to the value of the leader of the divine spirits. Hanju immediately chose to continue. Turbot World Destruction Worm. Born at the beginning of the chaos. It was born from the primordial chaos's remnant, when the 7 supreme rules suppressed the primordial chaos. It can devour magic power and senses. It will never grow up, and can only be imprisoned in the stone tablet without the primordial chi. So impressive. Devour magic power and senses. It needed nebulous primordial chi to be nourished. No wonder Ancestor Shen Yin dared to bring them along. The Turbot World Destruction Worms might not be highly regarded by Ancestor Shen Yin, but this tablet was equivalent to a chaotic supreme treasure. Its surface was tightly sealed. A chaotic supreme treasure was equivalent to a great Tao supreme treasure. It was a supreme treasure that even a great Tao supreme wanted. Above that was the ultimate Tao treasure. It was a legendary treasure that all living beings in the chaos did not know of. Hanju returned to the main Tao field and placed the stone tablet in the primordial heavenly prison. It was invisible and formless, but it was fixed here and needed him to activate it personally. He wanted to use the primordial heavenly prison to enslave the Turbot World Destruction Worm. He didn't know if it was feasible. Han Ju left a wisp of will to monitor, and then returned to the third Dao field. He directly sent a dream to Ancestor Shen-yin, and met him with his true body. In the dream, Ancestor Shen-yin opened his eyes. His expression instantly darkened when he saw Han Ju. Although he was terrified, he could sense that this was a dream. Why should he be afraid then? You took my treasure. This karma has been formed. Ancestor Shen-yin said coldly. Han Ju asked curiously, do you not understand the current chaos? Do you know who you caught? Ancestor Shen-yin said coldly. Isn't he your son? No. They're the 5 great divine punishers appointed by the leader of the divine spirits to supervise the great Tao divine spirits. Your sins are grave. The leader of the divine spirits will not let you go, Han Ju said casually. He found it strange. This fellow was a top existence among the great Tao sages. Why was he so rash as if he didn't know anything about the chaos? Ancestor Shen-yin frowned. Who is the leader of the divine spirits? Where did you come from? Ancestor Shen-yin hesitated. He wasn't stupid. Perhaps the chaos had already been overturned. Han Ju's methods were already extraordinary. How strong was the leader of the divine spirits that he spoke of? However, he had just come out and discovered that there were not many great Tao sages in the chaos. Few could compare to him. So he was fearless and dared to capture the chaotic fiend celestial. Han Ju asked, where are you from? Tell me. Ancestor Shen-yin sneered in his heart upon seeing that Han Ju was not arrogant. It seemed that this fellow only had cultivation, but he was only a lackey of the leader of the divine spirits. He had no guts. Ancestor Shen-yin snorted. I've been suppressed at the bottom of the chaos for countless years. I just fought my way out not long ago. The bottom of the chaos again? Then, did this fellow know the ultimate god of punishment? Han Ju wanted to ask, but he decided not to after thinking about it. Karma would form once Ancestor Shen-yin said that he knew the ultimate god of punishment. The ultimate god would naturally know. It was best to kill him directly. 6-star hatred points was not so easy to resolve. Ancestor Shen-yin sneered upon seeing that he was silent. Hurry up and return my treasure. Han Ju took out the primordial judgment sword and used the dark falling prison to turn the dream of the dark nightmare into reality, pulling Ancestor Shen-yin's body into the dream. In an instant, Ancestor Shen-yin seemed to sense something, and his expression changed drastically. Han Ju waved his sword and attacked with all his might. He didn't even need to use the Dharma idol fusion technique. His own supreme power was enough to kill the other party. Ancestor Shen-yin was shocked. Sword Chi flashed and killed him before he could resist. The dream shattered. Han Ju's will returned to reality. He opened his eyes and checked his interpersonal relationships. Ancestor Shen-yin's portrait was no longer there. He was beyond dead. There were no surprises. Han Ju wasn't an ordinary great Tao Supreme. He could kill 25,000 foolish sword sages with his full strength. Ancestor Shen-yin had not reached the great Tao Supreme realm. The bottom of the chaos, Han Ju muttered to himself curiously. Then he continued cultivating. The mid-stage of the great Tao Supreme realm was not enough. He still had to become stronger. The Tao Creator realm was his small goal. The Creator Lord realm was his long-term goal. Surpassing the Creator Lord realm was his ultimate goal. Circular stone platforms floated in the blue sky and white clouds. The 5 divine punishers stood in front of the ultimate god of punishment on the highest stone platform. The ultimate god of punishment sat on a crystal throne. Blood chi surged in the crystal, looking rather sinister. The ultimate god of punishment's right index finger tapped the armrest thoughtfully. Etienne was impatient and couldn't help but ask, "Exalted God, that fellow's background is unknown. Such an expert appeared in the chaos, and is still capturing chaotic fiend celestials. Could it be that life's forces are running rampant again?" He was furious upon thinking of Ancestor Shen-yin. It had been a long time since he felt so aggrieved. The ultimate god of punishment slowly said, "His name is Ancestor Shen-yin. He's from the bottom of the chaos." Han Tua Etienne, haven't you been to the bottom of the chaos? You know how terrifying it is. Han Tua and Etienne's expressions changed drastically. Back then, it was a nightmare when they were suppressed at the bottom of the chaos by the primordial ancestor god. Although they survived, they were still cautious. At that time, there was a terrifying aura in all directions. They still trembled in fear even now. The ultimate god of punishment said, "Since the divine might heavenly sage has already taken action, I believe Ancestor Shin can't live. This matter will end here. You're not allowed to step into the lowest level of the chaos before the chaos is strong enough." He had fought his way out from the bottom of the chaos and knew how terrifying that place was. He changed the topic and said, "I'll give you another mission now." Han Tua said, "Go ahead." The ultimate god of punishment narrowed his eyes and said, "I want you to investigate the ancient desolate and send back what you see and hear." Etion asked in surprise, "Can't you deduce it?" Han Tua and the other 3 divine punishers glared at him. The ultimate god of punishment chuckled. That Pangu severed the rules of karma. Most of the chaos can't even be considered a place, let alone the ancient desolate. I'm not going personally, because I have something to consider. Chapter 888 Jiang Gongming, Deducing Sun. Chapter 888 Jiang Gongming. Deducing Sun. The 5 divine punishers looked at each other when the ultimate god mentioned Pangu. Pangu had already died several times. Unknowingly, he was no longer that powerful in the hearts of the living beings in the chaos. However, they did not expect Pangu to be able to sever karma, preventing even an existence like the leader of the divine spirits from spying on the chaos. What a terrifying Pangu. "All right, you can leave." The ultimate god of punishment waved his hand. The 5 divine punishers bowed and quickly left. The world fell silent. The ultimate god of punishment meditated and cultivated. As he began to cultivate, a wisp of black aura appeared between his brows, making his face look very strange. Ancestor Shin Yin's death did not cause a stir in the chaos because he was unknown. The chaos welcomed an unprecedented peace ever since the ultimate god of punishment took over. The peace was deathly silent and desolate in the past. Now it was lively and prosperous. All the worlds hidden in the past appeared and began to recruit geniuses to fight for domains, resources, and providence. The most lively was the chaotic domain where the heavenly Tao was located. The heavenly Tao was the first world with perfect rules. Before this, the world was only tangible, but there was nothing special. The heavenly Tao's uniqueness made the worlds near it very prosperous. The heavenly Tao had already become the reliance of hundreds of worlds as time passed. However, the 3 pure sacred world created by the Tao ancestors' personal disciples at this moment, the 3 pure sages, also rose. Under the domain led by the divine rogue Taoist, the heavenly Tao and the 3 pure sacred world had already begun to compete in momentum. Reading on Meibo.com, please. Tens of thousands of Taoists meditated in a grand palace in the 3 pure sacred world. They faced a direction, and 2 Taoists with extraordinary auras faced them. One was the heavenly lord of primordial beginning, and the other was the heavenly sect master. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning had an immortal Tao bone and a sharp gaze. The heavenly sect master wore a black robe and looked like a youth, but his body emitted a murderous aura that made people not dare to look at him. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning slowly said, "We can't fight with the heavenly Tao head on. After all, the heavenly Tao is our home. However, our unfilial disciple betrayed us and controlled the power of the heavenly Tao himself. He offended his superior. I've decided to defeat the heavenly Tao in the chaotic assembly and defeat the heavenly Tao in terms of reputation before devouring it." The Taoists in the hall discussed. The chaotic assembly is a gathering of geniuses. It's indeed important. Although the heavenly Tao's foundation is strong, it has been suppressed for too long. In terms of the heavenly Tao, there aren't many primordial chaos zenith heaven golden immortals. That's right. How can the heavenly Tao compare to us in the 3 pure sacred world? However, we can't avoid the divine might heavenly sage if we want to touch the heavenly Tao. The divine might heavenly sage is powerful, but our grand pure sage is not bad either. The Taoists discussed. They were very happy and couldn't wait to compete with the heavenly Tao. The name of the divine might heavenly sage was indeed thunderous, but they had never seen the power of a divine authority general. much less the divine might heavenly sage. The heavenly sect master snorted. Divine might heavenly sage. I want to see him. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning smiled and said, Junior, you can't speak nonsense. The divine might heavenly sage is indeed powerful. Besides, the heavenly Tao and the three pure sacred world will fuse together sooner or later. How can we be enemies? The heavenly sect master glanced at him with disdain, but he did not reply. At this moment, an inappropriate voice sounded. What's there to fight for? Do we still need to care about the heavenly Tao if we obtain the peak of the chaos? Everyone turned around. The person who spoke was a white-robed Taoist. He had a fair face and was very young. He looked to be only 16 or 17 years old. He stood up slowly with an arrogant expression and looked down on all the Taoists present. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning chuckled. Jiang Gongming, do you think it's so easy to fight for the top of the world? There's so much chaos that even we don't know how big the three pure ones are. There's no limit to the number of geniuses. Jiang Gongming smiled. I attained the Tao at 1,000,000 years old, and attained freedom at 10 million years old. I attained the great Tao at 50 million years old. I will definitely dominate the chaotic assembly. Teacher, tell me, is there really someone in the chaos who has a higher potential than me? I've never gone out on an adventure, and I have never experienced enlightenment. I've cultivated on my own. Those Taoists who didn't know Jiang Gongming were in an uproar. Great Tao sage. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning shook his head. You're indeed talented, but you lack experience. Many geniuses have appeared in the heavenly Tao recently. For example, the three disciples of the divine might heavenly sage are already at the freedom realm before they reach 10 million years old. Although they are affected by opportunities, their cultivation realms are true. Jiang Gongming frowned and asked in a low voice, who are those three? Tao's sovereign, Zhao Xinyuan, and Jiang Yi are currently cultivating with the Grand Pure Sage's clone. Jiang Gongming frowned even more. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning said, Gongming, get to know them and prepare for the chaotic assembly in the future. Remember, don't become enemies. The Grand Pure Sage intends to nurture them, and they might be fellow disciples in the future. Jiang Gongming nodded unhappily. The other Taoists also began to discuss Tao's sovereign and the other two. This made Jiang Gongming even more unhappy. The heavenly sect master stared at Jiang Gongming and smiled. It was unknown what he was thinking. Third Tao field. Hanju opened his eyes. His cultivation level had increased a little after 100,000 years. Although it was not much, he was indeed becoming stronger. He was very satisfied. The expansion of the primordial world still showed no limits so far. The stars in the primordial world doubled in number after breaking through, as many as the lifespan of the origin. The turbid world destruction worm was still in the primordial heavenly prison. It would probably take some time. After all, it was worth 1 trillion years of lifespan. Hanju habitually checked his emails and checked his recent friends. Some were beaten, some obtained opportunities, and new maps were unlocked. Hanju discovered that more and more names of the world appeared in the emails, ever since the ultimate god of punishment took over. This fellow was really wise from the looks of it. However, was the stronger the chaos, the better it was for him. A primordial fiend celestial? Would the chaos discover his son's bloodline in the future and besiege him, even if he surpassed the primordial fiend celestial, and his son inherited his bloodline? Hanju decided to deduce. I want to know the future of Xing Hongshuan's son. Yes, let's deduce how he dies. Hanju thought silently. Calculating the time of death was the most direct. It would be a good thing if he couldn't deduce it. 10 trillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Would he really die one day? Hanju frowned and immediately chose to continue. He entered the illusion. Hanju opened his eyes and discovered that he was standing in a palace covered in bones. There were bones of all kinds of races like purgatory. It was ghastly and terrifying. He saw that the palace was vast. At a glance, there was a huge throne that was 10,000 feet tall 1,000,000 miles away. It was coiled with dragon bones and looked like it was cast from iron. It flickered with a cold light. A figure was sitting lazily on the huge throne. He was 10,000 feet tall, and looked like a child compared to the huge throne. This is my son. Hanju narrowed his eyes and sized up the 10,000-foot-tall figure. This child was actually wearing his time Dao robe. His black hair was tied up under a golden pearl crown. He had a handsome face, and his eyes were blood red. He was like an emperor who ruled all living beings, as he looked forward lazily and stared indifferently in Hanju's direction. Chapter 889 Chaotic Variable. Chapter 889 Chaotic Variable. This was the first time Hanju saw his son's appearance clearly. He indeed looked like him. He was more handsome than Han Tuo. But he also had a hint of evilness. This kid had a strong killing intent. Hanju turned around and saw a burly figure walking over, with a strong light on his back. His expression became strange after he looked carefully. It was the ultimate god of punishment. Figures appeared behind the ultimate god. Among them were 5 great divine punishers and dozens of great Dao divine spirits. They walked past Hanju and stared at the 10,000-foot-tall figure in front of them. Hanju noticed that the great Dao divine spirits were all very nervous, and they were trembling. Han Tuo clenched his fists and his face was pale, as if he was suffering in his heart. Primordial Fiend Celestial, you will die here today. Do you have anything to say before you die? The entire sky above the palace was covered in dark clouds and thunder rumbled. The 10,000-foot-tall figure looked down at the great Dao divine spirits in front of him and smiled disdainfully. My good brother, are you also going to kill me? Han Tuo's expression turned even uglier. Tian cursed. You brat, you've done all sorts of evil. Your brother can tell right from wrong and won't help you. Instead of blaming him, you should blame yourself for your monstrous evil. Reading on Maibo XNOVL. Calm please. Ha 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 ha. The 10,000-foot-tall figure laughed sinisterly. Who decides what's evil? All of you? I slaughtered a chaotic domain. But that domain is only a place where cultivators gather. Those cultivators all have negative karma. Besides, have you never killed living beings by mistake? Have you not killed many? The great Dao divine spirits were silent. The ultimate god of punishment said indifferently, we'll let bygones be bygones once the rules are set. We all have to follow the rules. Times have changed, understand? Besides, is this matter as simple as the slaughtering of a chaotic domain? You trampled on the supreme rules and caused chaos in the lives of all living beings. You stepped into the chaotic river of destiny and severed the past of countless cultivators, causing their Dao hearts to be in chaos. Do you have more sins that you need me to explain? You must die today. The 10,000-foot-tall figure stood up and said disdainfully, you want to kill me? You think too highly of yourselves. Ultimate god of punishment, do you really think you're already the strongest in the chaos? The ultimate god of punishment was moved. The 10,000-foot-tall figure laughed. There are still realms above the great Dao. That's a realm that even you and Laozi can't enter. As the creator of his Dao, my father has long stepped into the Dao creator realm, and so have I. Today, you will witness the power of the Dao creator. Boom! A terrifying aura erupted, and the entire palace instantly turned into dust. The ultimate god of punishment raised his hand to block, but the great Dao divine spirits behind him were destroyed one after another, leaving only Han Tuo. Han Tuo forcefully blocked, but his body couldn't withstand it, and he was bathed in blood. The 10,000-foot-tall figure rose. His entire body shone with a strong light. He looked down at the ultimate god of punishment and raised his right hand, his palm facing him. The ultimate god of punishment's expression changed drastically. He discovered that he could not move. Ultimate god of punishment, I respect you for your contributions to the chaos, so I didn't kill you. However, you overestimate yourself and actually dared to rally the divine spirits to attack. You're really courting death. The 10,000-foot-tall figure said coldly, his tone filled with killing intent. Hanju was secretly shocked. His son was a Dao creator? His aura was indeed terrifying. A cold snort suddenly sounded. The aura of the 10,000-foot-tall figure was immediately extinguished. Everything around him stopped moving. Even space stopped twisting violently. The 10,000-foot-tall figure's expression changed drastically. Who? Primordial Fiend Celestial. You want to overturn the chaos. Your sins should be consigned to eternal damnation. Your body and soul will be destroyed. Your cultivation will be reduced to nothingness. An indifferent voice sounded. Everything in front of Hanju shattered like a mirror as soon as he finished speaking. He saw the 10,000-foot-tall figure shatter into countless small pieces and turn into dust. The illusion shattered. Hanju opened his eyes and frowned. The last to attack should be the chaotic consciousness, the formless transcendent deity, or the ninth chaos. No matter who it was, they were undoubtedly Tao creators. Hanju recalled carefully. His youngest son was not completely depraved. At least, he couldn't bear to kill his brother in the end. Instead, Han Tuo followed the ultimate god of punishment to kill his younger brother. Of course, there was probably something else. Hanju couldn't blindly trust everything he saw. One thing was certain. His youngest son was still reckless. A half-step Tao creator dared to act recklessly. In addition, from his son's words, he knew that Hanju had also become a Tao creator at that time. Why didn't he appear when his youngest son died? Could it be that he was stopped by other Tao creators? Hanju directly skipped the possibility of the father and son falling out. He chose to believe the most dangerous possibility, which was that he had lost and was suppressed by the other Tao creators. He immediately felt a sense of danger. He still had to cultivate diligently. Hanju took a deep breath. In addition, he had to educate his youngest son well and tell him not to be reckless after he was born. Hanju wouldn't deny his son because of the future, because that was only a fate in the present. It had never happened, and he could still change it. Then he continued cultivating. Time quickly passed. 40,000 years later, Turbid World Destruction Worm successfully enslaved. The Turbid World Destruction Worm has a favorable impression of you. Current favorability max. Hanju opened his eyes and teleported to the main Tao field. He moved the stone tablet into his hand. Soon, he saw the mother worm come out of the stone tablet and wiggle its body at him to show affection. This mother worm was probably the will of the Turbid World Destruction Worm. Hanju used his sage sense to comfort it for a while and let it return to the stone tablet. Then, Hanju began to refine the connate restriction contained in the stone tablet. He used 100 years to refine it into his Dharma treasure. He threw the entire stone tablet into the primordial world and drew the primordial chi into it to nourish the Turbid World Destruction Worm. Then, he teleported to the third Tao field and continued cultivating. Hanju was still looking forward to the Turbid World Destruction Worm. The terrifying insect race that devoured dermic powers and thoughts was definitely a cultivator's nightmare. They were even more terrifying than the inauspicious evil. In the pure white space, there were no other colors other than white. At a glance, there was no end to it. A huge head floated quietly in one corner of this space. Many stiff corpses as tiny as sand could be seen around it. The huge head was covered in long hair that was like withered grass. Its face was crimson, and it had 9 eyes. Its 4 pairs of eyes were superimposed on the top of its head, and there was a single eye between its brows. He suddenly opened his 9 eyes. His gaze was extremely cold and emotionless. The aura of time flowed out heavy and lonely. Who is spying on me and creating my fate? The huge head muttered to itself. I can't deduce the chaos. Could it be that Panga didn't sever the supreme karma just to resist the divine authority generals? Interesting. There are still variables in the chaos. I want to see who can rise. I'll make this chaos more interesting since I'm going to change. With that said, the eye between his eyebrows suddenly burst out and quickly disappeared into the distance. Chapter 890 Father and Daughter Battle. Chapter 890 Father and Daughter Battle in the Depths of the Chaos. 2 groups of cultivators were at odds on a dilapidated continent. On one side were Ancestor Shitian, Li Daokong, Shi Dudao and the others. On the other side were Huang Zuantian and the others. Huang Zuantian had even more subordinates than Ancestor Shitian. Huang Zuantian stared at him and said, Ancestor, you should join life on account of our friendship with the heavenly Tao. I'm the orthodox lineage of Life Lord, and have 1,000,000 calamity life controllers under me. You can't lead these subordinates alone. Shi Dudao and Li Daokong frowned. They had naturally heard of Huang Zuantian's reputation. He had gone from a nobody to a life lord. His methods were naturally powerful. At the very least, they could not compare. Ancestor Shitian smiled and said, Huang Zuantian, I didn't expect the heavenly Tao to have someone like you. Your talent isn't in cultivation, but your potential is the same as that divine might heavenly sage. It's immeasurable. Huang Zuantian chuckled. Thank you for your praise, ancestor. Now, I only want to gather the Calamity Life controllers and look forward to the future together. Although the chaos is peaceful, we can't escape our fate. We will be defeated one by one sooner or later if we don't unite. We were actually no longer chaotic life forms when we became Calamity Life controllers. We have to restrain ourselves and unite if we want to survive in the chaos. Ancestor Shitian nodded as if he agreed with Huang Zuantian, but he did not agree to the merger. The atmosphere became solemn and silent. Shi Dudao thought to himself, what's going on? Why hasn't the Dark Forbidden Lord appeared? What's he doing? He suddenly couldn't see through it. He thought that the Dark Forbidden Lord and the Divine Might Heavenly Sage were the same person. The Dark Forbidden Lord first supported life and helped the Divine Might Heavenly Sage increase his reputation. Now that the Divine Might Heavenly Sage was already famous in the chaos, it was time to clean up the mess and unite the Life faction to develop into a potential force hidden in the dark. Reading on Maibo XNOVL. Calm please. Ancestor, have you thought it through? Huang Zuantian narrowed his eyes and asked. His right hand behind his waist secretly gestured. This was the signal to prepare for battle. Ancestor Shitian took a step forward and smiled. We can submit. But shouldn't you prove your strength as the Life Lord? Upper-level methods can't convince the masses. You still have to rely on mystical powers if you want to lead the Life faction to prosperity. Huang Zuantian smiled and said, Then please enlighten me, ancestor. His eyes emitted a cold light. Ancestor Shitian suddenly sensed danger. For some reason, he thought of Hanju's heaven-earth mystic yellow world-piercing sword finger. This kid was indeed not simple. No wonder he could become a Life Lord. Time passed. 100,000 years passed. Han Qing'er was still meditating and cultivating under the old tree. Now, her cultivation level had already reached the primordial chaos zenith heaven golden immortal realm. She had attained the Tao in hundreds of thousands of years. This breakthrough speed was already exaggerated. Qing Wen'er had just finished cultivating and was stretching. She glanced at her daughter and couldn't help but ask, Qing'er, aren't you tired? In any case, Qing Wen'er couldn't continue cultivating. She would stop to rest every once in a while. Han Qing'er didn't even open her eyes as she said, Why would I be tired of becoming stronger? Perhaps you just can't feel your cultivation speed. Qing Wen'er blinked and was stunned for a moment before understanding. She was mocking her cultivation talent. Qing Wen'er slapped Han Qing'er's back, but he did not use much strength, afraid that it would affect her cultivation. She sighed as she looked at Han Qing'er's side profile. Be it sons or daughters, they all yearned to cultivate. She didn't understand it in the past, but now she did, because it was passed down from their father. Hanju's cultivation was even more exaggerated. He had been in seclusion for millions of years. Her scalp would tingle every time she thought of it. Footsteps sounded at this moment. Hanju walked over. Qing Wen'er stood up in surprise upon seeing him. Husband, why are you here? Han Qing'er also opened her eyes. She stood up and moved in front of him. Father, I want to spar with you. The living beings not far away also opened their eyes. They only looked a few years older after so many years. Hanju smiled and said, I came out to see you. He glanced at Han Qing'er and said, You're not qualified to spar with me. Han Qing'er was not convinced. Impossible. I'm very strong now. Those disciples are not my match. They haven't even stepped into the Tao. They're only cultivating simply. How can they compare to you? So, only you can fight me. How about this? I'll let Jiang Juesher fight you. No. Han Qing'er rejected firmly. Han Qing'er said Dad, next chapter will be a fake, and will be replaced with real chapter after few hours, so don't panic. She wasn't stupid. Jiang Juesher was a freedom sage. The terrifying feeling he gave her back then was still vivid in her mind. Moreover, Jiang Juesher was only a disciple. He wouldn't hold back against her. However, it was impossible for her father to hurt her. Han Ju smiled and used the dark nightmare to pull Han Qing'er into the dream. The dream was the chaotic void. Han Qing'er looked around in surprise. She thought that her father had brought her to the void and did not realize that this was only a dream. Han Ju said, "Since you want to fight, come." Fiend celestial Dharma idols condensed above his head. Every one of them was 1,000,000 feet tall. There were 100 of them. All of them leaned forward and looked down at Han Qing'er. Han Qing'er was dumbfounded. She had never seen such a scene. She looked up and saw that she was surrounded. She trembled in fear. Ant. She suddenly thought of this word. Back when she was traveling in the immortal world, she had seen many children who liked to squat and play with the ants on the ground. They surrounded the ants. This situation was identical. Han Ju said expressionlessly, "I'll let you see my power since you insist on fighting me. What right do I have to shock the chaos? Watch carefully." The heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial roared angrily, scaring Han Qing'er so much that she trembled. She subconsciously wanted to escape, but she was imprisoned by a terrifying force and could not move. Even her soul couldn't leave her body. Impossible. Han Qing'er's face was pale. She could only watch as the heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial punched. The killing intent was real. Her father was not joking with her. Boom! The heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial punched out, and Han Qing'er's body and soul were destroyed. The dream ended. Han Qing'er opened her eyes and gasped. Her head was covered in a cold sweat, and she looked terrified. Qingwan'er asked with concern, "What's wrong?" The dream was too fast. Han Ju chatted with her as he fought, so she didn't notice that Han Qing'er was pulled into the dream by her father. Han Ju asked with a faint smile, "Are we still going to fight?" Han Qing'er shook her head frantically. Qingwan'er's expression darkened as she looked at Han Ju upon seeing her so frightened. Han Ju coughed. "It's nothing. I just fought with her in my dream and didn't hurt her. She's just shocked." Sigh, how dare she challenge me with this mentality? She still wants to surpass her big brother? Han Qing'er blushed, but she couldn't help but shiver when she thought of the scene just now. How terrifying. So her father was so terrifying when he was serious. No wonder the sages in the Universal Hall were so respectful to him. Had they been beaten like this in the past? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.